What's up, people? Do dudes need space? I don't know what you mean by that. Also, send econ or die was funny. Air conditioners? I bet the US makes a lot of air conditioners, surely. We're number 4. Probably China. Maybe Germany. You married? No, I'm 20 years old, brother. I mean, it's Germany. Could be Vietnam as well. Germany's number 6. I'm gonna guess Vietnam. Ooh, they don't make air conditioners at all, apparently. Dudes need space. Okay, real, I guess. Anyway, time to at everyone in my Discord server. Do you all work for China? Well, I work for... I know I do. I know I get paid by the CCP. I'm gonna annoy everyone because we got the non-fun awards going on. But if you guys send those, send what? I have the link pinned in all the main chats to CCP awards. Yeah, the CCP sponsored non-fun awards. I should add that to the PowerPoint I make. It's just a Google form. You can fill it out to vote for what you think is like the best debate, or best non-fun ally, best debate opponent. Non-fun is funded by the Center for American Progress. That would make sense. A lot of Econoboy mentions. Econoboy is gone because I think Econoboy is mentioned twice in it, maybe 3 times. Like twice, just because he's mentioned in Stream Ally and Debate Ally because he was both a Stream Ally and Debate Ally. And even though he's gone, he was there for most of the year, I think. When did he? I don't actually remember when he retired. It might not be technically most of the year, but a decent chunk of it. And enough to be in. He was my teammate in like 3 or 4 debates, so I put him there. Bro, I don't know who else would make air conditioners if it's not these are the four. I mean, I got China and the U.S. You rock, not fun. I'm so sorry. True. I'm gonna guess India. There's no way it's India. I'm trying to be a dick. True. There's no. I'm out of guesses. I don't know any. It has to be. I guess Japan. I'm gonna guess Japan. Japan was not up there. Thailand. I would have never guessed fucking Thailand. I would imagine. I would think. I would think it's more capital intensive than Thailand would have. Oh, that's my Discord fucked up. Let me test this. I know it shouldn't be. Wait, what does it matter if your stream gets copyrighted? Destiny watches Jubilee. Yeah, but Destiny's exempt. They actually take my stream down. They let big streamers react to them. They have like a whitelist of who's allowed to react to it without getting taken down. I think they probably still take as monetization, but they don't just take my monetization. I would still do it if they just took my monetization. They take down my monetization and take down the live stream itself. They get on a whitelist. They only let big streamers on a whitelist. That's as AF. It is as. It's discrimination. They,
Hola.
you know, oh, what's up?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. You been doing good?
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I was asking if you were doing good. I don't know if you interpreted that.
Oh, sorry. I missed the first word. I heard you've been doing good, so I thought you were commenting on my awesomeness.
Well, that is true as well. That is true. Both of those things are true. But I
gotta say I like the first interpretation better. But
that's actually,
yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I'm now basically done with college, which is exciting.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Like I'm done with all my exams and stuff.
Yeah.
Non-fun. What do you think about AI? Are you a doomer? Do you think it poses serious existential risks?
I want to go that far. I mean, I think as it stands today, the only thing I'm concerned with is electricity prices, and I don't think they've affected them majorly yet. And then when it comes to like the actual existential risk, I don't feel informed enough to have an opinion on that. Like, I know there's plenty of people who will make the argument that it would be essentially impossible to have any type of super intelligence that would be actually aligned with us, but I don't know. I don't feel like I have enough knowledge to even know if some type of super intelligence is possible on any reasonable time span, and whether it'd be possible to get us aligned. If I had to place probabilities on it, I think I would say there's only intuitively, and from the limited knowledge I have, I'd say like there's 10% chance that the AI tries to kill us, but that at least we could design an AI that doesn't try to kill us. But
yeah, I mean that's a little bit higher than where I'd go. I'd be at like maybe 3%. But yeah, I think we're broadly on the same page. I mean, the broad case for thinking that we're going to be developing that we might be developing super intelligence is just, well, first of all, just as an intuition, think about how different AI is today from like AI 2 years ago. Like,
yeah.
AI went from basically being useless to in just a few months. It's like there were tests that were given to PhD level experts, and in a few years, it went from in a few months rather, it went from doing about as well as guesswork to doing as well as the PhD level experts,
Right.
and in fact better than the PhD level experts. So, and then you can look at the progress in AI capabilities. So the amount of compute has been growing by about, I think, 4.5 times per year since 2010. I think algorithmic improvements have been going up 3 times per year. So it's just like there's been this massive increase in terms of how efficient the AIs are being. The number of models that we can run every year has been going up 25 times, and the maximum task length that they can do. So, like, if you look at how long it takes a human to do a task, and then you compare that to, and then you see if the AI can on its own do a task that takes a human that time. The maximum task length the AI has been doing has been doubling roughly every 7 months for several years. Yep. So if you just extrapolate out the trends, or even think the trends slow down 10x, you just get an extremely rapid rates of technological progress.
Right. Yeah. I did read. I'm pretty sure I read that exact argument in one of your posts. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I have nothing original to say. I say it all on my blog, and yeah. So what have you been up to? I've heard rumors that you've been on a generational run. Is this true?
Generational run? That seems, I don't know what they would even be referring to. I don't feel like I've been on a generational run, but
okay. So you will say the generational run rumors are unequivocally false.
yeah, I'll say that. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's disappointing. So what sorts of things have you been streaming about recently, or have you done recent streams? I don't know.
Kind of. I just yesterday was like my first stream in 8 days, but other than that, I've been still streaming. I don't know. It's been mostly boring econ stuff. It's been a little bit of, I've done most of the more philosophy stuff like off stream, just because I think I might have another conversation with Ryan at some point.
Oh my god!
I don't know if you saw this at all. I think do you know who Pisco is?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was a debate with me and Pisco against Ryan and another like conservative lawyer. It was about the prompt was, and Ryan came up with the prompt: if the American left has abandoned America's moral prospect, and basically Ryan's position was, the American moral prospect, it's laid out in the Declaration of Independence, and it says that we have these inalienable rights, God-given inalienable rights, and if you stray away from that by being some evil utilitarian or being some evil egalitarian, you have abandoned the American moral prospect. And that was a painful one. There were a few points where I feel like, especially Ryan's teammate, just like did not even track what Pisco was saying. And
yeah, sorry. So the debate was the debate about the boat assassinations.
No, it was just about the prompt was just, has the left abandon America's moral prospect? And most of the debate was basically, Pisco talked quite a bit more than I did, which is fine. I know Pisco likes his 1v2s, I know, but the first 30 minutes of debate, I think, were us talking about is Trump's actions at all relevant? Their position being that's just a whataboutism, and then our position being, well, we're bringing it forward simply because right now it seems like Trump is doing a lot of things that are anti-Constitution, contrary to the Constitution, and the American left are the people opposing that. So whether or not Trump's actions are actually anti-constitutional is relevant if the left is opposing those. And then the rest of it was us going back and forth on if the founders had a coherent enough idea of natural law and stuff to actually to warrant America's defining prospect, being able to be narrowly defined in such a way that would exclude DEI, like if you support DEI, that's straying from the American moral prospect, when the founders themselves had much bigger disagreements about whether slavery was contrary to natural rights. A lot of it was about that, and I think that was I feel like that's most of what we discussed. It was painful.
Yeah. Wait, did you have a debate with Destiny?
No, I didn't have a debate with him. I went to one of the Unfuck America.
Oh,
events.
sorry. Wait. Okay. I went to your YouTube channel. I misread the thumbnail. It says, "Can Destiny be vegan non-fun?"
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I assume he did not de-vegan you.
No, he did. He did not. His arguments. What's funny?
No,
is that,
actually I did watch his arguments about animals, and I thought that they were extremely poor.
Yeah.
Kind of a joke.
What's funny is that he gave, in the video I reacted to, his most recent debate with the Yale student, he gave almost exactly the same answer as the Leela Rose, who he debated on abortion, as the answer she gives when when she's asked about veganism, which is, essentially, I mean, I think it's reducible to the oh, you have to be a member of a rational kind in order to be granted sufficient
Right.
moral value to not be.
It's the thing he said was that the reason humans, that he think the kinds of beings he cares about, what he cares about is human consciousness.
Right. Yeah.
And then what he seemed to mean by that is human consciousness is when you're a human and you have consciousness. So, I mean, the problem is you could just imagine if we discovered that someone who we thought was human just was not human, right? So imagine we discovered that just that people from Laos, they're an alien psyop. They have exactly the same physical and mental capacities as humans, but they lack. They're not biologically human. They were built in a laboratory by the aliens. In such a case, it would still seem wrong to torture them, but on his view, it's just their interests would stop mattering at all. And then the other problem is just the position that he's defending, that animals' interests don't matter at all, is not at all intuitive, right? That would imply that it's if there's an animal, if there are a million animals in your way, and you can either just torture them all to death to move them aside, or you can walk around, and it would slightly inconvenience you to have to walk around. It's you should just torture them all to death because their interests matter zero, which is totally insane. Or his view implies that you could set a cat on fire, that if we could burn live cats for biofuel, that would be fine. That if kicking a dog was kind of funny, it would be okay to do that, assuming it didn't make you more violent. It'd imply that it was okay to consume Animal Crush videos, assuming that didn't make you more violent. It would imply that you got to putting a puppy in a blender, that the only reason why that's bad is because of the psychological effect it would have on people, where it's if you just did it out of sight, out of mind, and no human found out about it, and it didn't affect your character, then it would be perfectly all right. It's this is not the position of common sense. The position of common sense is animals' interests matter, and that implies that what we're doing on factory farms is very bad.
In the most recent debate he did about it, essentially, the guy who was debating made an argument somewhat analogous to that. They were talking about moral intuitions. In Destiny, his response is that, well, in hunter-gatherer societies, people didn't have the moral intuition that, killing animals was bad because they, needed to do it to survive, and they didn't think it was bad to do so. How do you explain that intuition when it seems, obviously...
What an idiotic fucking point. Jesus. That was phrased kind of aggressive, but I mean, that really is a ridiculous response. Where it's first of all, do we know that hunter-gatherer societies didn't take seriously animal interests? We know that they hunted them, but I think maybe they would have reacted poorly to gratuitously torturing them. But also, really, your standard for ethical conduct is the hunter-gatherers, which were notoriously warlike and violent, where they died at 45 at the high end because they were always killing each other. This is your standard for ethical conduct. It's just it's very silly.
they probably had a much stronger intuition that killing people in other tribes that were, in their outgroup was, at least more acceptable than we view it today. Like it's, we don't view killing people in Afghanistan as morally acceptable for no reason at all, at least. Like,
yeah. Well, it's like the next time that Destiny's having a debate, uh, if he's debating some conservative who says, and he points out that Trump attempted a coup, the conservatives should say, "Oh, but the hunter-gatherers, they would have thought things were okay because they thought sort of like centralized leadership was perfectly all right." In Mesopotamia, they loved dictatorship. Yeah, it's silly. It's sort of sad to watch Destiny talk about veganism because it does seem like he loses 30 IQ points. I mean, I guess it's partly because just they get worse when everyone gets worse when talking about philosophy, or maybe this is just Gelman amnesia. Maybe it's like philosophy is the thing I know about. So when people say stupid things about other subjects, I'm not aware. But they say,
well,
but
I will say, like when I watch him talk about econ, he does not. He does decent sometimes because. You can just learn the textbook explanation for things and they'll be like 80% right most of the time at least. But there are certain things where it is not fun watching him try to draw a supply and demand graph. It is not fun watching him talk about, wage price spirals, which just have not observed to be particularly meaningful or relevant ever. So some of it probably is that, but still seems he loses at least 15 IQ points.
Yeah, but I think he's one of the better political commentators. He's kind of entertaining guy. Well, like a lot of the guys on the internet, they're sort of like they have like a smarminess about them that I think he doesn't have. Even though my sense is he has sort of depraved moral intuitions in lots of cases, but there's a particular like smarmy character that say the Dean Withers of the world have that's like deeply repulsive that Destiny does not have. It's a bit hard to articulate exactly. Yeah.
When will we get the Bethan's Bulldog v Destiny debate? That's what we need, bro.
I mean, I would of course do it. I'm pretty happy to debate people in general.
Yeah, I don't know if he would necessarily be opposed to it. I mean, he's done a lot of vegan debates by now. He used to do, like, I know he's talked to, like, Ask Yourself, like, 50 times. He did that, like, 6 years ago or something.
But I think he's sort of, like, boycotted talking to Ask Yourself, I think.
Yeah, at least about veganism, yeah.
Yeah. But
he knows he loses.
I think when he talks about human consciousness, I think like what he really means is like, well, what I care about is the consciousness of, it's like what he wants to say is that it to get out of the name the trait stuff. He wants to say, well, if you have an alien or if a non-human that's relevantly like us psychologically, well, you could say, well, they would still broadly have human consciousness in the sense that their consciousness resembles ours. I think that's what he would say. But it's like, if that's human consciousness because it resembles it's like, if what you mean by human consciousness isn't just consciousness had by humans, but is instead something like consciousness that resembles the consciousness of like intelligent adult humans, well then that'll exclude babies and that will exclude the mentally disabled. I mean, babies no doubt have just a totally bizarre, weird like my guess would be that the daylight between babies' consciousness and adult human consciousness is not considerably. It's like the daylight between that and adult humans. It wouldn't shock me if that wasn't that different from the daylight between animals and adult humans. And so, and then the other point is just that if what you care about is, it's like you care about mentally disabled people, you care about their interests, but you don't care about, but you don't care about, human interests, you care about the interests of mentally disabled human, but not the interests of animals. And the grounds is that it bears resemblance to adult human, to like the human consciousness of non-mentally disabled people. Well, then the question is just, it's like, it becomes very hard to see what about their psychology is supposed to be making a difference. So, like, the difference between the psychology of a mentally disabled person and a non-human animal, of certain very severely mentally disabled people, is it doesn't differ in terms of their intelligence, and it plausibly doesn't differ considerably in their degree of sentience. Because I don't think there's good reason to think, at least of the animals we eat, that they're much less sentient than we are. And so then it'll differ just in these like extrinsic features that affect how human they are, but that don't affect anything that seems morally relevant. So it'll be like, well, we have different senses from birds. But then it's just like, really? Like, the reason why, like, mentally disabled people matter is because their senses, the senses they have, is more similar to the senses that adult humans have who aren't disabled. That's what's... The reason it's bad to set them on fire is
what if they're blind?
They have similar mental states. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just a very implausible view. It doesn't make any sense. It's never made any sense.
I remember in the conversation he had with Trent Horn, it sounded like it just relied on like DNA, because he was like, oh, you know, even disabled people or babies still fall into the bucket of human conscious experience. But yeah, I don't know if he's ever thought through,
but
you know, the
but then if we just
discovered
that like mentally disabled people, their DNA was so warped that they like weren't human or something, then okay, out to the gas chambers they go.
I personally go the reverse route, where if they say, oh, it's just genetically human, I ask them why they draw their line at human versus like the same haplotype or, you know, anything closer to you genetically, because it's just an arbitrary genetic line. And so then you can say, oh, well, since I'm Asian, I'm okay killing anybody that isn't Asian or anybody that isn't in my specific haplogroup for genetics. But instead of going outwards towards aliens or whatever, you know, you focus it and then you'd be like, okay, so then are you just straight up a racist and then live by those ideals?
Yeah,
and I think that's a harder bullet for him to bite.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's like the human consciousness has a lot of problems. Where the first one is it's subject to all these just extremely counterintuitive results. Where if you just change purely factors that don't affect anything about a person's conscious experience, but just affect like their DNA, then you get with the result that they don't matter. But right, well, the other thing is, as you're pointing out, it's like this really doesn't seem to be the kind of characterization that's like actually morally important. It's like really the reason why it's wrong to send me into a gas chamber and torture me is because of my DNA. It's because I share DNA with other humans, who Destiny also shares DNA with. So like if like that just seems, it's like you think about two theories, and one theory is, oh, the reason it's bad to force me into a gas chamber is because pain and suffering are bad. It's bad to hurt, you know, it's bad to be in intense pain. It's bad to be deprived of freedoms. Interests matter. And then the second story is, oh, it's bad because you share DNA with Destiny. Like,
yeah.
That is a much less plausible story.
I'm curious what I've been thinking a little bit more about this recently because and it's reminding me of this because like the whole point of Trent Horn in the abortion conversation where he was, you know, talking about all the hypothetical of animals, he was trying to, I think, he said he was trying to get Destiny to bite a bullet, like, you know, that infanticide is permissible. They mentioned the Peter Singer, of course, as must happen in every abortion debate with a Christian conservative. They mentioned Peter Singer.
Right. And then they have to have a line about how Peter Singer is what happens when you take atheism seriously or something.
Yeah. I'm curious what you actually think about his position on infanticide, which, as I understand it, is basically just that we already, you know, by omission, you know, we find it acceptable to like withdraw life support from some severely disabled infants, and it's probably similarly acceptable to, you know, do it via commission, actively do it, at least in some cases.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Singer goes a bit further. I guess I might maybe have an even more counterintuitive view than Singer's, where I think it's like the reason why it's wrong. Like I think the primary reason why it's wrong to kill people is in reality, it's because it raises insect populations. But putting that aside, the primary, putting aside weird facts about the empirical world, the main wrong-making feature would just be that it deprives them of years of happy life.
Right.
And so then it's like this will be equally true if the infant is disabled. And so it would still be very bad. It's just that if you replace them with another child who will live a better life, then I think that's an improvement. This actually, this is an argument people give against utilitarianism, where they say, utilitarianism would imply that it would be okay to kill everyone and then replace them with people with slightly higher welfare. And I basically buy that.
Yeah.
I have a piece about this if people are curious that I wrote a while ago. I think there are pretty strong arguments against, but I do think that's one of the more counterintuitive utilitarian judgments. But it's also very easy to see why we have the intuition that that's bad, where
Right.
like, humans have a status quo bias. So of course we have a bias towards keeping around what already exists. And I think just provably our intuitions about population ethics conflict with each other and aren't reliable. So I don't place too much stock there. And there are certain impossibility judgments in this vicinity.
I've got one question. Are you guys excluding?
Well, I've got one answer.
It'll be more than one question, because the first question is: are you guys effective altruists by chance?
Big time.
Big time.
You're
Okay.
talking to. Do you know who you're talking to right now, Vegan? I think I've probably sent you his blog post before.
Yeah, I remember you sent me one about the climate change thing, and I had my criticisms.
Damn.
So my question for an effective altruist, just probing thoughts. I have not thought any more deeply than literally 5 minutes as of now thinking about it. So effective altruists are something along the lines of doing like the most with what you have to benefit others, or you know what, we'll skip it. I'm gonna have my question, and then you can explain any misconceptions I have. So let's say hypothetically you donate $100 today to FarmKind or something to help out. Would it not be better to instead put that $100 into like a Roth IRA, some tax advantage account, and you sit on it until you die? So if you're 20 right now and you die at 72, the average life expectancy of a male, so it's 52 years. That $200, at assuming a 7% interest rate, it turns into $6,745. Would it be better to put that $200 in today to FarmKind, or put $200 into some tax advantage account, wait till you die, and then in your will you say put all of this money towards FarmKind or whatever equivalent exists in 52 years if you're 22 years old and then 20 years old and die at 72? What would be the better option?
I think this is a good question. So I don't think this is a challenge to like the core idea of effective altruism, which is just you should.
Oh no, it's not to challenge it. It is literally just me probing the idea of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's not obvious so there is a case for waiting to give, which is just exponential growth is the most powerful force in the universe. If you wait to give, you get to give more. That said, there's some downsides of waiting to give. One downside is just as a fact about human psychology. It's very easy to say you're going to wait to give, and then, when you're older, come up with some excuse for why you need to spend the money. It's like, and so I think there's a risk. It's like if you give now, there's no risk that it doesn't get donated. Well, if you invest, there's a risk that you end up just putting it on the back burner.
Let's say that this person is like a true effective altruist, like they
right.
Specifically are doing this.
Yeah, you can imagine people for whom this isn't much of a risk. Now, so there still are lots of serious benefits to giving now. One of them is that EA funding is growing. And so the like really cost-effective opportunities to save lives, the low-hanging fruit is being picked. So it might be harder to do this in the future. And in particular, if you think that it'll depend on exactly which organizations you're giving to, but for some of them, it seems like it might be a particularly important time now. So right now, the insect farming industry is in its infancy, so actions to sort of derail that are particularly important short term. The other thing is it's true that money has compounding interest, but also like the benefits of money also have compounding interest. So if you spend the money on the shrimp stunners, they're used year after year, and so you get more total year uses out of them. And same thing with some of the other organizations. So overall, it's not obvious what to do. And my guess would be, I think probably the best approach is to give some of your money away now. In part because that helps inspire others to do it. It helps convince others to do it, and it makes it so that it's like there's a lower chance that you'll defect in the future. But then to invest a sizable chunk and then plan to give that away. So I think it maybe makes sense to split it, but I can see a case for investing and then giving more later.
Yeah, people also just have different views on like if we should discount the value of future generations. I mean, I don't really think we should, but there are people who will...
I think discounting the future is crazy.
Yeah.
Because the problem is if you discount the future, then if you so like there are economists who advocate applying like a 1 or 2% discount rate, where just like they think with each passing year, interests matter like 2% less, and they derive this from facts where people prefer money now than later, and they'll charge things at interest rate. But it's like if you extrapolate this over long time spans, because of exponential growth, you end up with saying crazy things like Cleopatra eating one cake mattered more than all global welfare today.
Yeah.
Do we think it's going to be calculable within our lifetime to determine? I mean, as computation advances, like to look at, okay, if I donate $200 now, it's going to have X effect on the insect farming community, plus social change to have other people be more likely to invest, versus saving money for 50 years and then donating the 3,000% more it's worth? Or is that something that's just too sci-fi and not possible to really calculate?
I think it's pretty hard to calculate precisely, and a lot of these organizations, at least the ones that are like plausibly highest impact, are ones where maybe very high impact, maybe no impact, but the expected impact is high. So normally it wouldn't be super clear. No, I mean that's not true of like the farm kind stuff. That stuff's more sort of more rigorous. But yeah,
there's
if you're
also
interested,
obviously uncertainty about the returns themselves. It's not there are safe investments you can make, but it's also not even certain that.
Yeah, if you're interested, Phil Trammell had a kind of long piece going into the case for this, and he ended up concluding that it was not super clear where you should give.
Okay. Yeah, because I just did a compound calculator. I just did 7%, like inflation adjusted, since that's what it's been historically.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can still have really bad market changes and shit like that.
I think this is certainly a reasonable thing to do, and I think the case for it is more plausible depending on what you're spending on. So, like, if what you're spending on is, say, like building the EA movement, so you're giving money to orgs that promote EA. Well, that has more compounding interest, it seems like. If what you're spending on is global health stuff, then it seems like there's a stronger case for waiting. And then if you're spending on long-termism stuff and like AI alignment, well, then it seems like 70 years from now, odds are decent. Just that's past the point.
I feel like I've explained how you do expected value calculations before. I'm not saying that we can do like exact things, and also he's not.
Or there's a case for giving now instead of waiting.
The cake itself is actually calculable.
But yeah, it's not obvious. I don't know. So yeah, yeah, I think it's not clear exactly what to do.
Maybe that could be your next blog post.
I had a blog post about this.
Thanks for the
actually,
membership,
where I-
the gift of membership.
though I think since I wrote that
Justin,
blog
yeah,
post,
goddamn, this YouTube algorithm
I
deciding
became a
who gets
little bit.
memberships.
In
Justin
the blog post, I
Browder,
came
my
out.
God.
I was more firmly on the side of
I appreciate it.
investing
Thanks.
to give.
Hell yeah.
While now I'm sort of more undecided about it, but.
You thought this guy didn't have a blog post about something? Unbelievable. He has.
Yeah.
Anytime I need to, whenever I see a new objection to utilitarianism from Ryan, okay, I can go to this guy. I can go to all my writings on utilitarianism and just control F it, and it's wonderful.
Funny, yeah.
Like I said, I'm not like criticizing EA or anything. I was just like a thought that I had. I'm like, oh, well, if Bentham's Bulldogs here, I can quick ask him.
Yeah, and it's a good question. Yeah.
What's up,
I've in total written 1,186 blog posts.
I'm curious. You used to be a hedonist, right? I'm curious, but I don't know exactly where you stand on that now. I thought you said you weren't anywhere at one point. I'm curious what moved you from that, because I remember, I think I read your Hayden's, I think it's how you pronounce it or whatever, Oyster blog post, and I think you were a hedonist back then. But
yeah. So I'm not a hedonist anymore, but I still agree with the Hayden and the Oyster case. So yeah. I'm still an aggregationist. So I think lots of small benefits can add up to outweigh.
Thanks for the
very large one. But I mean, the main things that convinced me were twofold. So the first one was that, well, I became a theist, and I think hedonism and theism don't go well together. So the more you think the more evidence you get for theism, the more evidence you get against hedonism. The second is, I think hedonism just is really counterintuitive. And there are lots of utilitarian judgments that are counterintuitive, but I think there are really strong arguments for them. But then the arguments for hedonism I don't find as good. So I mean, just here's one thing that seems really obvious to nearly everyone. One of the things that makes their life go well is that, like, they have loved ones with whom they have relationships. Not just that they derive pleasure from their loved ones, but actually that there really are loved ones with whom they have meaningful relationships. So if you replaced all here's something that I think would be really bad for me. If you replaced all of my loved ones with robots, if you replaced just like everyone in the world with like robots that acted like them, so that I never helped anyone, I never had any connection with any real person, so that I never had a real friend. Instead, just I was interacting with non-conscious robots all the time that were sort of pretending to be my friend. I think that would be bad for me. That seems obvious. But then on hedonism, if it doesn't affect the quality of my mental states, well, it's not bad for me at all.
I know it's horrible. YouTube algorithm sucks. That's wrong.
Now, I think if you're a hedonist, you can bite the bullet. But I don't.
I think there would, to me, just seem like we're kind of overfitting our intuitions. It's probably relationships are generally good for us and are, generally from a hedonistic view, still good for you, and therefore we might, intuit that they have some intrinsic value when that's kind of just us overfitting the general hedonistic value they give us. But
I mean, that's not impossible. I mean, you can always, for any intuition, you can always tell a story about the intuition overfitting. Sure. I don't find that to be that plausible response. I mean, part of the reason is that there are lots of other ways, there are lots of heuristics that are generally pretty decent ways of promoting welfare, but that aren't. That no one thinks have intrinsic value. Okay, so it's like having money correlates with having a higher level of welfare, but nobody thinks that having money is intrinsically good for you. So that if you had a different net worth but the same amount of happiness, relationships, knowledge, and so on, that just like the guy with more money would be better off.
I guess what would you I don't know. It feels like if I use that framework, I don't know. like why would equality not be intrinsically valuable then? Because it does seem like we have a lot of people do have that intuition, and I like typically my response to that is that, you know, in the same way it seems like we're kind of overfitting the intuition there. Like I don't know, I don't know exactly how I could separate out equality or other things which I think are useful heuristics versus things that we seem to believe have intrinsic value.
I think the general methodology that you should use is if you can tell a story about how something is would be a utility maximizing heuristic, but it seems intuitive that it has intrinsic value, you should think probably it has intrinsic value, but you should be open to doubting it if given a strong argument. So
Sure.
With equality, I think there are strong arguments against equality having intrinsic value. Mike Humer has 2 different papers where he gives arguments against this. There are also Johan Gustafsson has a paper where he shows that caring about equality or that both egalitarian and prioritarian views that either care about equality intrinsically or that care more about the welfare of the worse off rather than just the total welfare level, they both violate ex ante Pareto in the sense that they make it so that you ought to sometimes do things that we view worse off in expectation and are good for no one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason I don't have the equality view. The other thing, I think the case for us being biased with egalitarian assessments is stronger, where we just know that humans don't have very reliable intuitions about sort of like fungible units like well-being. So like if you have to stipulate, keep the well-being level the same, then it's like our intuitions won't track that very well. But here, it's like you can imagine exactly what the world would be like if all your loved ones were replaced by robots. It would look exactly like the current world. But I think it would be, it seems clear that it would leave you considerably worse off.
That does make sense. Damn it.
Well, the last thing is, I think that there's a reason. I think as an econ guy, you might be sympathetic to this. I think there's a reason to trust people's judgments about what's good for them more than people's aggregate judgments about society. And so it's like, you have direct access to what's good for you. You're sort of more directly aware of it. And so I trust more people's intuitions about which things leave them worse off than I do about people's intuitions concerning like how to structure a society.
Yeah.
So I think there's more of a reason to trust our intuitions about well-being than our intuitions about like egalitarianism.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do. Yeah, I need to read more of I always forget the guy's name. There's the economist guy who like originally sort of used the veil of ignorance argument to argue for utility. Yeah, Harsani. Yeah. I need to read more of his stuff.
So such a cool guy.
True. Did you watch
totally
the Matt Brunegg Brian Kaplan debate at all?
Yeah.
You did?
Yes.
Hell yeah. It was really funny when Kaplan asked the which version of Rawls question and Brunegg did not even really respond to it. It was I felt that moment was that was a good.
Yeah, I think I was like doing something else when I was listening to it, so I did not super pay attention, so I don't off the top of my head remember that moment. But yeah, I thought the debate was a lot of talking past each other. It was like a lot of Brunegg saying, welfare is good. And then Kaplan just being like, but do you agree with me about this bad thing government does? Brunegg saying yes. Then, do you agree about this bad thing government does? Brunegg saying yes. And then Kaplan's like, so it sounds like we agree that government often is an impediment to welfare in serious ways.
Yeah. And that's what that's somewhat my thoughts on it. Like there's nothing Kaplan presented. I don't want to say nothing. There's not much Kaplan presented that like would actually change my view on welfare. It just seems like the place he would get to, and I think he said this like at the end of the debate, was like, well, even if you want the government to do all these welfare programs, you should still have you shouldn't speak super strongly in support of the government. You should have like a more mixed view. You should just say, sometimes the government does good redistributive programs, but sometimes the government really sucks by not having open borders. And that, that type of argument's not going to actually change my mind on like welfare being good. And Kaplan just did not present much evidence that it was bad. And he even said he at least agrees short term it's good for people who get it. And in the long term, he's like, he doesn't think we have good empirical evidence on the sort of incentives it creates for like work and growth and stuff. So
yeah, I do remember thinking that that the area that one of the areas that Brunig was not as compelling on was he didn't seem to have a great answer to Kaplan's argument for skepticism about welfare studies, where Kaplan's argument was basically, if welfare studies tend to only look at short-term effects, and then the long-term effect is where most of the consequences lie, and we just don't have a good gauge on that, and there are plausible models by which it would have negative effect. But yeah, I thought it was a kind of disappointing showing. But probably, I think Brunig did a little better.
Well, I think rhetorically Kaplan did better. Brunig, and I've seen Brunig do better before. Like if you watch him talk to Yaron Brook, like he obliterated Yaron, who's like a ANCAP libertarian dude.
Yeah, I met Yaron actually.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he was giving a speech at my university for like the conservative club, so I went out.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Yaron's a little.
He doesn't really know what he's talking about philosophy or economics, it seems. But
yeah, it doesn't.
But really. I don't know what I'm talking about economics either. Were I to draw a supply and demand curve, it would be painful. I could draw one. Okay.
Could you, if I told you to like make the supply curve more inelastic, would you know how to do that?
Let's see, more inelastic. You'd have it like steeper line, right?
Yeah. Like a perfectly inelastic supply would be just a like vertical line.
Yeah, it would be just straight up and down.
Yeah, you did get it.
Okay.
Ask him.
Do you have
public
more
schools.
questions?
I mean, I only use those in debates with conservatives where it's like, okay, like I don't think you've clearly not like actually come to this view on like tariffs, for example, and trade deficits by reading about economics. You're just repeating what you've heard on Twitter. So like I'm gonna ask them to like just explain some of these basic things now.
Yeah, it is funny. There's a lot of disdain for Econ 101 held by people who are ignorant of Econ 101, where people will be disdainful of the insights that economics possesses when they just literally don't know the first thing about economics. Like, they couldn't draw a supply and demand curve. They, don't know what, an indifference curve is. They don't know what, like, they just have no idea about, what goes into production. Just no idea about anything.
Right. Yeah, with those types of people, I'll be mean to them and ask them basic questions to see if they're just speaking out of their ass.
Yeah, I was very into econ when I was younger. Like when I was in middle school, I was weirdly into econ, but I don't remember it super well. No, it's true. Like I don't know why. I got into like politics when I was in middle school. I thought, but I can, if you want, I can link you my econ blog from 2017. It was not very good. There were only 2 articles. It was extremely embarrassing.
Hell yeah.
But I think, I mean, honestly, I think it held up decently well for being in like 7th grade at the time. But okay.
I was a Bernie supporter in like 7th and 8th grade, so we all make mistakes. The minimum wage, I'm probably going to totally agree with this. It's probably going to be perfectly fine. Social Security, oh boy. Someone in my chat, by the way, I know the answer to this, but I'll have you explain it. He wants to know why you've changed your mind on cutting taxes for the rich.
Well, I love, so I have this billionaire friend who paid me a lot of money, and then I sort of, so I mean, the basic argument is that, cutting taxes so it's like a non-trivial portion of the wealth of very rich people is spent on very effective charitable ventures. So like, I forget the exact number. Let me see. But I think it was like 5% or something of the money that's spent on charity of the wealth of very rich people just is like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who give basically all their money to charity.
Yeah.
Okay, the wealth of all billionaires is 6.2 trillion. About 2% of that is Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, Dustin Moskovitz, and Carrie Tuna. Um, um, so it's like it seems plausible that about 5% of billionaire money goes to effective charities. If you think like half of it's the 2%. That those people have and spend on highly effective charities, and then these efforts. If you assume 5% of billionaire funding goes to effective charities, and you think that their philanthropy is about as effective as GiveWell charities, which is a pretty reasonable assumption. It might actually be an underestimate because economies of scale mean that if you have more funding, you can save lives more efficiently. Bill Gates has maybe saved many tens of millions of lives. But if you just say 5% of billionaire funding goes to effective charities, then this means that each time you raise $100,000 of taxes from a billionaire, that causes one extra death. My guess, I just think that probably outweighs the first order effects.
Well, someone in my chat is screaming right now that charity donations are tax deductible, which, I mean, to my knowledge is true. Although I think there are some people who.
It's right. I don't see why. It's like, yes, charitable donations are tax deductible, but just if you tax more of the wealth of rich people, then they have less money which they can donate to charity.
Well, I mean, I think they would. I mean, I don't know what they'll say. I imagine it'd be like these people probably have a set amount of money that they are like willing to donate to charity, and if they're willing to do it, they might just donate it.
My sense is basically
that but
Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, these people give basically all their money to effective charities. But I would, what I would support is shifting billionaire taxes so that they pay more total money in taxes, but the charitable exemption is larger. So it's like we tax more than non-charitable ones. That I think would be good.
Sure. You're necessarily only taking money away from them that they are not otherwise donating to charity. And the effectiveness of the tax money is certainly not zero. Well, it's not zero, but it's probably not. It's not going to be anywhere close to it's not going to be close to GiveWell.
Right. Yeah. I guess I'm not tracking the first point. But yeah, right. It doesn't have to be zero. Yeah, and I guess to be clear, this isn't a position I'm too wedded to. It wouldn't shock if some economist nerd says, really, if we do this more advanced calculation and we compare the amount spent on foreign aid that it outweighs, I just defer to them. So far from what I've looked at, it looks more plausible that they're generally bad.
Do you think charity is more effective than food stamps? I don't want to speak for you, but you wouldn't. So he's not suggesting that we could get rid of food stamps and replace it with private charity necessarily and feed the same number of people. He's just suggesting that on the margin, charity like GiveWell or the Shrimp Welfare Project is better.
Yeah,
than
right. It's like I also would think that if you just took all the money spent on food stamps. I'm in favor of the food stamps program, okay? But I'm just more in favor of GiveWell. If you took all the money from food stamps and you gave it to GiveWell, you'd save way more lives.
Based, hell yeah.
Poor people in America are way richer than rich people in other countries.
Right.
It's like these are people living on $2 a day who are dying of disease. But yeah, I think It is pretty disgraceful, the like foreign aid cuts that have been being carried out. That I think is one of the worst things, probably the worst thing the Trump administration's been doing. I mean, the recent AI stuff is honestly up there. It's like just like speed running, increasing extinction risks, just like hurtling us towards the precipice.
Mhm. Well, what about if artificial dyes are banned? The fact that we're all going to be eating the beetles. Is that more or less in the foreign aid cuts?
Um, I'd guess way less. I mean, the average person reduces insect life years by
Oh, that's true.
like 14 million per year or something. Wait, let me find the exact. I think it was 14 million per year. Um, yeah, each year the average human reduces insect populations by about 14 million. So let's say the foreign aid cuts have reduced. Let's say that the people would have on average lived 40 extra years, and foreign aid cuts have cost 100,000 lives, very conservative. Times 14 million, we get the result that the number of insects that the foreign aid cuts caused to come into existence is on the order of 5 times 10 to the 13th. What is 10 to the 13th?
The insects
what is the number?
Are not American insects, so
yeah, that is funny. Okay, so yeah, so that means it's affected about 10 trillion insects, probably. I'm sorry, I would have thought it would be more, but yeah, so that's probably a bigger deal than the cochineal farming stuff.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, that is. Wait, did I do the math wrong somewhere? Let's see. 100,000 lives time 100,000 people, 40 years, 14 million per year. Yeah, that's like 10 to the 100 trillion. It is just insane how much we affect insects. Like just unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean there are like.
Yeah, I think you liked my tweet about this or whatever, but like there's this like local politician. I don't even think she's elected, but like she's on some local board in my in a town neighboring me, and she's just like really big on like being a bee community and like beautifying our town and like putting flower beds everywhere, and I'm just like, this is gonna massively increase the wild insect population. It's just horrible, and no one is open to the argument. It's horrible. It's evil.
Yeah, it's quite bad. Hillary Clinton, she once said women are the primary victims of war, but really the main affected party is insects. Everyone else is a rounding error.
That's true.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the good news is probably, in expectation, the number of digital mines there would be way more than the number of insects. So maybe it's like the digital mine. It's like present humans end up getting cucked by farm animals who get cucked by wild animals who get cucked by insects. Well, insects are wild animals, and then they get cucked by the like future digital mines. So those are the ones whose rights we need to fight for. And then it's sort of like easier to get people to care about them.
Yeah.
Because they're not small, unlike insects who are small. Oh, I should clarify for people. I don't know if people know my views, but so I think how we our impacts on insects matter a lot, because I think it's plausible that insects feel pain. If you look at the most detailed report by Rethink Priorities that tried to estimate how intensely insects suffer compared to people, it was somewhere a reasonable estimate was somewhere between 10% and 1% as intensely as people. And so if you think insects suffer 1% as much as people, then people affect 14 million insects per year. So that will just utterly dwarf everything else. And whether you're a hedonist or not, if you think suffering's a bad thing, if you think pleasure and pain are among the things that matter, then our impact on insect just is so immense, so staggering that it outweighs the other stuff. Now, and then I think we're biased to not care about insects just because they're really small, and so we don't take their interest seriously because they're sort of small and weird looking. But if you just imagine taking an insect and blowing it up to 10,000 times the size, like imagine these the giant prehistoric insects, and then imagine poisoning those guys by the trillions. Like it would have like these like enormous like giant sloths or not sloths, giant like armored bugs. If you imagine these guys like thrashing around as they were poisoned to death, that would seem like a big deal. But the only difference between that and present insects is size. But now if you think, oh, this guy's an insect welfare guy, so doesn't he think we should stop killing insects? Well, no. So my view is also that I think insects mostly live bad lives. Insects' lives are mostly short, and they mostly die painfully. So most insects are what are known as R strategists, meaning they give birth to many, many offspring, and most of their offsprings don't survive for very long. They might lay, thousands of eggs. And so the life of nearly every insect just involves perishing very quickly after just a few days or weeks. So I think insects mostly live very bad lives. So I'm in favor of doing things to reduce the number of insects that come into existence, because I think it's bad to come into existence if your life is shit and you die painfully. So I'm in favor of making there be fewer insects. And so that's when, I think greater human population growth is good because it lowers the number of insects. And I want to be clear, I'm not an antinatalist. I think humans mostly have good lives. I think, I'm not, some weird pessimist, okay? The reason I think insects live bad lives is just it's an uncontroversial biological fact that nearly all of them die after just a few days or weeks. And so if you die painfully after being alive for just like 3 days, you haven't had enough value in your life to outweigh the extreme painfulness of your death.
True.
Just imagine like someone offers you, you get to...
Repeat that last bit you cut out, or maybe my Wi-Fi cut out. Someone's dead. Hello?
Did you find that oratory to be powerful? Did it move you to tears?
So one of our you cut out at some point. You cut out about when the about the initial offer. It was like, imagine someone offers you, and after that you were cut out. So I was unable to be moved, unfortunately.
I said if someone offered you to an extra week of life, but at the end you would have to starve to death, you would not take that deal. But that's basically the offer that every insect is offered in coming to exist.
Yeah, someone asked if I would kill all the bees, and like obviously I would not like literally kill the bees, but I do think you wrote a good article about.
I kill them all with my bare hands.
Why? I mean, it would probably be. I imagine if you just pressed a button to kill every bee right now, like it might have like net negative effects just because of the knock-on effects it would have on like the environment and the pollination of stuff. Certainly.
Yeah. Well, but I think the knock-on effects would be good. The knock-on effect is lowering environmental productivity, which is a good thing. It's like the knock-on effects only are bad if you think the animals in nature live good lives.
I think that's true, like generally, but I don't know at the scale of literally all bees. Like, although there'd be some habitats that would be destroyed or whatever, and like that'd be not good because like even if birds have to eat some bees or whatever, well, a lot of birds probably live like negative lives too. But I think on the scale of all bees, I imagine there'd be effects bad enough that like they would spill over to probably a decent amount of the human population too.
I don't think so. The environmentalists they've sold you a pack of lies about how much the pollinators matter, But really, I don't. It's like I think pollinators, their impact on food on crop yields is like 8%. So just if every pollinator died off, the effect would be like 8% of crop growth, 8% reduction. And then the bees would just mostly be replaced with other pollinators in their absence. Like, I don't know. Have you read that, like, there are lots of people who are sounding the alarm about, like, oh, the honeybees are dying off and it's an existential threat. And then there are, like, debunkings of this that I found persuasive.
No, I haven't read any of those, but I did see many years ago a Matt Pat video about why the bee movie is bad because actually bees are invasive species and shouldn't be in America. So I do think I'm familiar that people like overstate it, which is why I would definitely be in favor of killing some bees. But I'm just not my guess. And I'm totally open to being wrong in this and becoming even more of an insect hater, would be that there'd be knock-on effects.
No, that is not, you're not an insect hater. You're an insect lover. You care about their interests, which is why you don't want them to be brought into, it's because you care about the animals in factory farms that you don't want more of them to be brought into factory. Have you read, here, I can send you. So John Halstead did a like book-length report about climate change and its impacts, and he was just talking about the like scenario where the world collapses because of biodiversity loss, and he thinks basically this is just not at all credible. I mean, there has been just lots of biodiversity loss. It has not appreciably affected humans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like England basically destroyed like most of their ecosystems, and just like this had no effect on them. And even the loss of all pollinator species, according to Our World in Data, would let me check to make sure I'm getting this number right.
Well, I mean, I think the study suggests crop production would decline by around 5% in higher income countries and 8% at low to middle incomes if pollinator insects vanished.
Yeah. So then it's just a tiny slice of this effect.
Sure. I guess that makes sense. So maybe I probably am in favor of killing all bees then. I guess I might just have to press that button. But the thing I was originally gonna pivot it to is you did write a good article about why honey is bad. And even if you don't buy, that killing all these wild bees would be good, certainly the bees that we specifically bring into existence to mass produce honey, I know you know more about the mistreatment of them than I would be able to recite. I mean, I remember a lot of them die in transport, for example. But
yeah, a lot of them die in transport. They're often kept where it's like ventilation's off. They're often so that just lots of them die of overheating or freezing to death. They're then given an inadequate diet they don't like, so we can take the honey. So they can't eat the honey. They're often placed in these sort of unpleasant structures that they don't like to live in, called Langstroth hives. They mostly live very short lives and die painfully. Parasites often spread. Great. They're kept in sort of these artificial conditions that are different from their natural environment. So, doesn't seem like they have a great time.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to mention real quick before I get to my regular stuff?
One thing. People should take the Giving What We Can pledge. They should pledge to give 10% of their earnings to effective charities.
I need to do that. I definitely will do it at the new year. I might do it before then. I probably, not that it would actually be that relevant, because I I don't get much money from Twitch and YouTube, and I don't think I'm gonna get a Twitch or YouTube paycheck till January anyway. But I should do it.
How much will you make from Twitch or YouTube?
Not that much. Whenever YouTube pays me out, which is every 1 to 2 months on YouTube, I get like $500, and then on Twitch I'll get like $100 a month about, which is 10% of that is non-negligible. But I would also still do it when I got a real job as well, which at that point it would be.
This is why you should do Substack. It's easier to make money.
I post there occasionally. I probably will post something on just food stamps at some point. And I might post.
I found your Substack. Oh, I'm subscribed to your Substack. Wow.
Yeah, you are. I don't know. I haven't posted it in a while.
Our taxes, but on what?
That article actually has misinformation on it. I have to correct part of it, but.
Wow. What's the misinformation?
It's not exactly misinformation. It's just I'm always too reliant on the Econ 101 logic. I think so. In the article, the tariffs are taxes, but on what? Like, I think the first thing I mentioned is like, tariffs are obviously taxes on imports, but also, you would expect them to like tax exports as well to have some equivalent effect on exports because, supposedly, well, I mean, part of the Econ 101 logic is, if you tax foreign goods and people buy less foreign goods, we're essentially supplying less dollars to other countries. And that would essentially shift the supply curve of U.S. dollars in the foreign pool, to the left. And that would mean, there are going to be less exports because other countries have to spend more of their dollars to buy our dollars, which makes U.S. exports more expensive. That is true and can be true, and like limited tariffs probably do. I appreciate exchange rate is the formal name for that, make the U.S. dollar more expensive, and that does reduce exports. But because tariffs also reduce like growth expectations, and they reduce the future, like the value of U.S. assets, because now they reduce the after-tax profit of companies because they have to pay all these tariffs. You do also have the effect of like U.S. assets just become less valuable, so less people buy them, and in fact people will sell them off. So part of the reason we saw the dollar fall after Trump announced a lot of his tariffs is because a lot of investors just started selling off U.S. assets like bonds and stock, and that'll offset some of it. So there's there's competing effects, and if you do the type of tariffs Trump is doing, the uncertainty and growth effects are probably going to outweigh any of the reduction in in buying foreign goods.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. There was a piece I read by, it was called Econ 101 is wrong about tariffs. And
yeah. I love that post.
They're worse than the Econ 101 said.
Yep. Yeah.
All the anti-Econ 101 people, they went to that post expecting to agree, and then they ended up getting killed.
Yeah, I have that post in my there's a graph in that post of what he says the effects of a tariff are. Normally they increase producer surplus, but he just has it shifting supply left to decrease both producer and consumer surplus. I have that graph in my Twitter banner.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. They're even worse than he says it is. They're worse than Econ 102 says it is, because he doesn't mention that.
You have to get to Econ 103 to learn the full effect. You have to get to Econ 104 where you learn the impact of economic degradation on insects.
That's true. But the process of exporting also makes firms more productive. It seems like buyers will communicate information to sellers to how to improve their production process and stuff. So there can be pro productivity effects just by nature of exporting itself too. Information matters a lot, and that's not even captured in just the efficiency arguments that he was making in that post about intermediate goods and stuff.
Yeah, I got the I got a
Jubilee
copy of
always
the
gives me a
tariffs
headache.
not only impose immense economic costs, but also fail to achieve their primary policy aim and foster political dysfunction along the way shirt. I got one for me
Hell
and one
yeah.
for my dad. My dad has a master's in econ, and he's a sort of old school like Reagan, Romney kind of libertarian Republican who
Yeah.
now is no longer really a Republican because he thinks Trump is really bad, and does not like the current crop of Republicans. They like the shirt.
Hell yeah.
But
Yeah, I have
anyways,
that shirt too.
I should. Yeah, I think I saw it from you, and then I decided to get it. But yeah, anyways, I
wow.
should get to bed. But thanks for having me on the stream. Nice chatting.
course.
Hope
Anytime.
hope the rest of the week as well. Have a good night.
Yep, you too. Appreciate it. Jubilee always gives me a headache. Also, I need to set up my hotkeys again because I like thanking you all and reading some chats during conversations, but it's easier for me to just hit a hotkey to mute myself to respond to some things rather than having to physically hit the mute button, but I'm on a new computer. But welcome back, everyone, who I didn't get to initially welcome back, and thanks for the... I did thank people for the gifts and the subs and such. Everyone remaining probably knows who that guy was, by the way, but Bethan's Bulldog, he's a Substacker. I think I've, like I said, I think he's literally the only Substacker right now that I have a paid subscription to. I intermediately have paid subscriptions to a number of a pretty large number of Substackers like Noah Smith, Matt Iglesias, Richard Anania. Actually, I don't know if I've ever done it for Richard Anania, but a lot of Substackers I will intermediately subscribe to. But as of now, he's the only one I have a paid subscription to. Did you know you're my most watched streamer this year? I should talk more here. Well, I appreciate it, a lady. We are, by the way. For anyone who doesn't know, they should be pinned everywhere still, but the non-fun awards are coming up, so make sure you vote in the non-fun awards. There are all the awards you can vote for, like best debate and like best stream ally and such. But there are also going to be awards that I give out, like to the best moderator, which you guys are not qualified to judge, obviously, and things I only have information to, like who is actually the like top donator and everything like that. So you guys could be in for some awards even if you don't get to vote for yourself. I can't see. I don't have any way to see who like just watched the most though. But it's nice to see you here, Lainey. And as I said, Jubilee does indeed give me a headache often. Okay, but it's double bad too, because not only do I have to suffer watching it, I have to suffer when they give me a YouTube strike for watching it. Horrible. Also, my stream, I don't know if it's lagging at all. I think they're like the actual like encoding seems fine, but there were 2 or 3 points, and maybe more, that I didn't see where it seemed like my webcam, for example, was chugging a bit. Hybrid Heater, did I miss out on the slop? You have not missed out on the slop. I know you're like #1 Destiny Glazer, but I am not #1 Destiny Glazer. I am like maybe top 50. Maybe. Do you disagree in anything? I don't know if you were here earlier, Eleni, but me and Bethan there were actually shitting on Destiny's veganism takes. I disagree with him on veganism. I think veganism is good and he should be vegan. I mean, I disagree. It's hard to say I disagree with him on this because I kind of think he just doesn't know enough to articulate this stuff correctly. I disagree with him when he says, when he talks, for example, about like the natural rate of unemployment and like, the Federal Reserve needs to keep inflation at like 5% unemployment at like 5% to avoid inflation, or like he'll say like part of the reason we should have immigration is because we're below the natural rate of unemployment and like wage price spirals are a concern. I disagree with that. I don't think the natural employment natural rate of unemployment is super meaningful. I don't think it's particularly good for basing policy off of. I think from my reading, it either, you know, the Phillips curve has always been relatively flat. We have data on wages and inflation on like the state level in the US. I think there's 2 different studies that observe that it's essentially always been flat, in that there's no big trade-off between employment and inflation, and there, or I should say, it might have been a concern when labor unions were strong, but now that labor unions aren't very strong in the US, it's no longer really a concern. There's I think the paper is called "Who Killed the Phillips Curve: A Murder Mystery." It's like a pretty famous paper on it. If you're wondering why I'm typing slow, they're doing construction on my house, and it's really cold in my room, and my fingers are physically cold and slow. Who killed the Phillips curve? A murder mystery. Is the Phillips curve dead? If so, who killed it? Conventional wisdom has it that the sound monetary policy since the 1980s not only conquered the great inflation, but also buried the Phillips curve itself. This paper provides an alternative explanation. Labor market policies that have eroded worker bargaining power might have been the source of the demise of the Phillips curve. We developed what's called the Calakian Phillips curve, the slope of which is determined by the bargaining power of trade unions. We show that a nearly 90% reduction in inflation volatility is possible even without any changes in monetary policy when the economy transitions from equal shares of power between workers and firms to a new balance in which firms dominate. In addition, we show that the decline of trade union power reduces the share of monopoly rents appropriated by workers and thus helps explain the secular decline of the labor share and the rise of profit share. We provide time series and cross-sectional evidence. So I don't actually have much credence in this explanation. I think I put more credence in the first explanation I gave, but if this is like, this is even if this is the case, I think Destiny is still wrong and he should update his views. Also, vegan is base. That's true. A lot of the unemployment in this country is just due to like the job market being very picky with who they choose to hire. Well, I mean, there's always going to be frictional unemployment where, you know, so okay, so what the unemployment rate actually represents is how long it takes to get a job. The 4% unemployment is not 4% of the population remaining persistently unemployed. What it represents is that each year, or you know, each month, there are some people who get jobs, some people who lose jobs, and sort of the net effect of, you know, the unemployment rate just represents sort of the net change in that. And what that really means is that it's looking at how long it takes someone to get a job. If it takes 3 weeks to get a job, you're gonna be counted in the, you know, in that sort of net unemployment rate longer than if it takes, you know, only I shouldn't have used 3 weeks because that's not even a full month, but you know, regardless, 2 weeks or 1 week to get a job, you would have a lower unemployment rate because there are just less unemployed people like any given time. That's what it like really represents. And part of the concern, so part of the potential both reason for recessions and sort of spirals associated with recessions is that when employers get more risk averse, unemployment will rise. And either you can view some people view like that as actually a driver of recessions. Is like when employers get quite risk averse for whatever reason. If there's I mean, what is the actual primary cause is always going to be more up for debate. But if there's some shock to like total effective productivity and that makes employers more risk averse, part of the driver of the recession might be the fact that employers are more risk averse themselves, or it could just be another sort of step into spiral where we have, you need a water bucket, non-fun? To do what? I'm not actually doing anything in Minecraft right now. I'm just running around. I don't have any goal. If I'm like, did I break ice or something? If I'm breaking ice, I'm not like trying to do something. I'm just, yeah. Thought you were clearing snow. Oh, if I break snow, I'm probably, it's just ADHD brain doing things. It's not actually me. I don't have any actual goal in mind. And that also, I don't think would even do much because I have a bunch of mods installed to make everything Christmas and snow. So I think the snow would just come back in 5 minutes. But I do need to go mining. And I do also need to fix this. Or maybe it's working and I shouldn't have it turned on in time. I forget. Hold on. So someone gifted, or no, someone subscribed on Twitch. I think Bones did a while ago. So in theory, oh, that did work. What the hell? Okay, that gave me like way more than a Twitch sub gives me, but I must have just not had it loaded in time. The streamer bot thing that updates my monetary goal, donation goal with all the stuff. Guess it's kind of hard to say. I feel like extra value kept by the firm could just as easily drive inflation too, but I no idea. Speculating. No, I think they were saying, so they were talking about inflation volatility, and more market power can actually lead to less inflation volatility because firms face a reputational cost to like raising prices. So like if you have you know, only a few firms in a given market, if like say there's some supply shock of volatility, it's total inflation, yeah. If there's like some supply shock, they might be actually less willing to push the full amount of the supply shock onto consumers because they face a higher reputational cost that's going to stick with them for longer than if there were, you know, 100 different firms in the market, and the market overall is very dynamic, and the number of firms was changing quite often. And in that case, you know, each individual firm probably would push the full supply shock price onto consumers because there's not the same like reputational risk. And we actually have evidence of this during COVID from companies that are making like masks and other PPE. Companies that stuck around for longer raised prices less often and to a lesser extent than companies that were not around for as long. I think it's in a post about, I think it's in this. Okay, regardless, it still has some stuff in it that's relevant, even if it doesn't have the study. You can see this is a monopoly, or you could have an oligopoly and collusion as well, and have roughly the same, well, I mean the same style of graph here where demand and marginal revenue are split. It's just you're also going to have some added stuff on top of oligopoly. With perfect competition, if there's a supply shock, you're going to see 100% pass through. For monopoly seller, you might you're only going to see 50% pass through. And this isn't even because of that's just due to how marginal revenue is split with demand, and it isn't even because of the reputational risk necessarily. Okay, marginal revenue drops faster than price with a linear demand curve. The monopolist marginal revenue curve is twice as steep as the demand curve. A $1 decrease in price would mean marginal revenue drops by $2. The monopolist really does not want to pass through that cost saving, which makes more sense. But if the logic applies for moving to from C, I never know how to say this. I'm just gonna say C prime to C. It applies exactly opposite if we were to move from C to C prime. Taxation is theft, non-fun. True. Famously. Not only tell you progressive taxes actually drop inflation. I don't think I've ever said that. In fact, the opposite is probably true. The more regressive the tax, the more you would expect it to lower inflation, because, you know, the logic being, and I don't think this logic fully holds, you know, poor people have a higher marginal propensity to consume. If you give a homeless person $1, they are very, very likely to consume that dollar. If you give a billionaire $1, they have a much lower marginal propensity to consume. They're very likely to save that dollar. That's not. I mean, that's not because, and I want to suggest, that's not because billionaires are always smarter with their money and like always brilliant people who make the right decisions and save. That's just because, you know, poor people have to cover their basic needs, and billionaires already have that set out, right? So, in theory, giving less money to people who have a higher marginal propensity to consume would actually lower inflation because people are consuming less. Like, you would shift aggregate demand to the left more by taxing people who are consuming their income than if you tax people who are saving their income. Tax everyone to oblivion? Me for real? Only the government should have money. Inflation wouldn't exist. True. We need no corporate tax, take on the unions, and upzone everywhere to destroy suburbs. Absolute truth. True. There was some talk about this during COVID. I think QE during COVID that went straight into banks didn't cause much inflation as I expected it to compared to the actual supply shocks. Yeah, well, I think... real quick. The problem with QE and inflation or whatever is, like, you're just going to... You're not necessarily increasing aggregate demand that much when you even do QE. Like, even in normal times, you're shifting banks' assets from, you know, whatever financial assets they hold to whatever equities, or we don't buy equities, whatever fixed income they have, to reserves. And sometimes that's not even done to increase the money supply. Like, the goal of QE in 2008 was not even to increase the money supply. It was just to buy toxic assets and get it off people's balance sheets, or to decrease long-term interest rates. They were just trying to drive down bond yields, rather than buying shorter-term securities, which actually are meant to give banks more reserves and increase the money supply. Now, in COVID, we did actually buy shorter-term securities to increase the money supply, but it's still it's not like a crazy amount. I think Brookings 2008 versus 2020 QE. You know, all taxes are bad. I don't think all taxes are bad, but how bad do you think income tax is? Well, yeah, first of all, I don't think all taxes are bad. I think, like, when you say bad, the impression I usually get is not suboptimal, it's on net bad. I don't even think income tax is on net bad, at least with how we have things right now. Income tax is not optimal. I think there are, like, I think resource rent taxes at least, like, can be, like, optimal. With regards to how bad income tax, like, how suboptimal income tax is, I mean, I don't know exactly how to quantify it. I can probably, like, I can tell you it's probably a little bit less bad than, like, corporate income taxes. Money's in the hands of a regular poor person has way more velocity than any other spot in the economy. That's the point I was making earlier. Yeah, taxes aren't bad; they just have different functions. Well, I don't know exactly what easy. I think by easy, when easy money says bad, he's not referring to like net bad. We should tax the current money supply, then burn. Well, we have to deflate the currency. True. Hold on, I'm turning my space heater on. I think you guys are gonna be able to probably hear it a little bit, but fuck it. Quantitative greasing, let's go. Well, I mean, up until I think this is the like first month where the Fed started expanding its balance sheet again, right? We were doing quantitative tightening up until like this month, right? Fed balance sheet news. Fed expanding balance sheets news. Fed may soon expand balance sheets, as said. Isn't this it? Can I just get this from Fred? They'll update stuff. Total assets. I mean, it's no. I don't think this is. I thought they said they were. Maybe it was just the soon thing. All taxes are bad. LMFAO. So true, Gavin. Horrible take easy money has. Everyone talks a hot game about balancing a budget, so let's go max tax. Well, this is just the Fed's balance sheet. It's just they're talking about that like assets they hold, which they do. I mean, they hold government debt. That's a big part of their assets, but. I thought there was, it might not be this article. Yeah, this, hold on, there's a chart in here. Oh my god, there isn't a chart in here. Oh my god, where is this chart, bro? In this one. Nope, okay. Kelly. Brookings 2008 versus COVID QE. Short term versus long term. Hold on, I literally see it down here. This chart! I think. Yeah, no, you can see it here. Like in 2008, you see how they did not have many short-term things, and they were buying more. Actually, this is not as big as I thought they had a... Is this even a chart I was thinking of? I thought they had a chart showing what the Fed was buying in 2008 versus 2020 with regards to just treasury bills. And showing, like in 2008, they were buying a lot of 10-year T-bills, and in 2020, they were buying like 30% 2-year, 30% 5-year, and like 30% 10-year. Or maybe I'm making things up and I'm delusional. Whatever. Regardless. Not gonna lie, Jubilee makes me hate things. I just saw the title on the video. I'm ripped as fuck right now. Not fun money buyback program when and how? What are you buying it back with? I mean, you can tax it. Big surprise to come out of the Fed's decision to cut rates again yesterday. It was not the rate cut, but as which was widely expected, but a decision to restart Treasury purchases. Okay, I'm not crazy. I did not make this up. Taking a face value to move does increase the size of the Fed balance sheets, and it does sound like quantitative easing that we lived through last decade, and it certainly does it does excite crypto bulls and others in the marketplace who think their holdings will benefit from a looser Fed. But it's not all that. First of all, the Fed is buying very short-term treasuries, not the longer 10-year notes that might have a more direct impact on mortgage rates or the economy. Second, these extra purchases are happening for tax reasons, yes, which are meant to keep their target rate from accidentally drifting higher. And thirdly, even though the Fed's balance sheet is large, so too is the U.S. economy. In fact, David Zeros Jeffries pointed out months ago, the balance sheet is typically around 20% the size of the economy. It peaked at 36% a few years ago after COVID. It's back to 21% and will remain there even with these additional purchases, notes JP Morgan. And that's as low as they can safely go without disrupting the plumbing of the financial system. People have been warning for months that bank reserves, flip side of the Fed's balance sheet, were getting too low. The Fed minutes from July explicitly mention it. Yeah. Panic actually stems from the upcoming corporate tax season. Companies have the same April 15th deadline as the rest of us. Literally paying their tax bills is going to drain corporate bank accounts, which further depletes bank reserves from the system. Hence, the Fed is buying about $40 billion a month in short-term treasuries for now, but that will fall by half after tax payments are done. Do you know who NFKRZ is? Not off the top of my head, at least, no. Yield reduction greater than 90% without pollinators. Fruits including kiwis, melons, pumpkins, and watermelons, cocoa beans, Brazil nuts. We can live without those, that's fine. Fruits including apples, apricots, blueberries, cherries, mangoes, peaches, plums, pears. Should I not be eating kiwis and melons and pumpkins? I don't eat almonds because almonds rely a lot on artificial pollination from bees. Is that also the case with kiwis and melons and stuff? I don't know if they, I don't know where kiwis are grown, so maybe they don't do like artificial pollination there. Or maybe they don't do it with, when they do artificial pollination, they might not do it with live pollinators, because you can do it for certain crops with like pollination machines, but like almonds, for some reason, it's really hard to do without actual live animals. Are kiwis artificially pollinated with live bees? When people say the VAT is the best tax, there's compelling evidence that consumption tax makes companies prioritize shareholder payouts over capital formation. That distortion isn't good for growth. Yeah, I think I've seen like King of the Coast tweets about that, but I never looked that far into it. I'm warming up my hands. Almond milk is only good for the first sip. Well, thankfully I don't eat almond milks. Growers rely heavily on artificial pollination, Google's telling me. Praise the Lord. I'm safe. Actually, I don't know when the last time I've eaten a kiwi is. Although I imagine there have been kiwis in some fucking juices I've had or something. Not that long ago, but not even vegan, but almond milk slaps. That's so cap. True vegans, ultimate vegans, don't even eat almonds because they rely on bee. Oh shit, watermelons rely heavily on bees. Oh no, fuck. Can't eat watermelon. Because almonds rely on artificial pollination from bees. In fact, it's like 60% of bee colonies in the US will pollinate almonds at some point. Some of those are like dual use, so like they will make honey for a certain amount of time and then they'll be used to pollinate almonds. So it's not like, just if all almond production stopped, it's not like 60% of bee colonies in the US wouldn't exist anymore. But that source of demand does increase the amount of artificial bee colonies that are made. So ideally you should not eat almonds. Thoughts on property tax? Property tax is fucking based, okay? Probably roughly like the best tax the US actually imposes right now. So you don't like wild bees? Oh shit. Okay, Minecraft is lagging the shit out of the chat. Wild bees are anti-capitalist. I also, you weren't here for that argument, not argument, but discussion, Eleni. I also don't really, well, I like wild bees, technically. I'm so concerned for the interest of wild bees that I believe most wild bees should not, ideally we would decrease their population greatly because they all live pretty bad lives. But, regardless of that, I think you should care about, the bees that we, through acts of commission bring into existence to produce honey for us. That's a question I've always wanted to ask. Also, does being vegan mean you can't eat honey? I mean, vegans will. So, like, vegan is not something that's. So, like, vegans will disagree about that. It's not going to be so narrowly defined that people who eat honey, but don't eat other animal products, shouldn't be counted as vegan, I think. But I would argue eating honey is still bad, and that's why I don't eat honey. I'm pro property tax, but I just read on their website. Axe mit tax, which says all the stuff they found could be funded in other ways or just got well based. I should read the Tax Foundation article about it because I don't know if they go over Michigan. Also, what's the really interesting? I mean, I guess it makes sense to tax a stagnant thing as opposed to taxing labor. Labor is actually productive. So I think, so for one, property tax is like property tax is also taxing land, right? We do also include the value of property itself, but part of it is the value of the land, and that's something. I mean, ideally, you could say we should just tax land, right? Land value tax me humans, I love them, but you're not just taxing like the stagnant property, but you're also taxing the land itself. But yeah, so you should be taxing stagnant things and like how and not always the land, perfectly inelastic, perfectly stagnant, but the property and people's decisions as to where to move are also relatively stagnant or inelastic. It doesn't seem like people care about property tax so much like when they choose to live places. So it's not a very distortionary tax. It doesn't actually distort behavior in the same way taxes on other things might, right? In the same way taxes on investment or taxes on labor might. Although I don't know how high the elasticity of like payroll taxes are, for example. Property tax assessments are really regressive. I think I saw King of the Coast tweet a paper about that once, but I don't think I care that much. Because they also, like, part of it is, property taxes are very important for local and state governments to fund everything they do. And part of what I was about to pull up the tax foundation thing, was confronting the new property tax revolt. They like calculated like how high, for example, Florida counties would have to have their consumption tax be, and it's like in some counties it would be like 30% or something. And I think they go through some other states as well. I don't know if they go through Michigan for Darko. And also part of the benefit there is like, you know, counties in Florida, for example, will vary widely in how much revenue they can conceivably collect with consumption taxes, but not as much with property taxes. Yeah, this is all-in sales tax to replace Florida's local property taxes by county. It's like it's 30% in Glades. Some of them it's doable, like 9%. That's totally doable. 10% that's doable. I don't know if there's any state that has 11% sales tax. I think the stream cut out for a second, but we should be good now. I don't OBS like disconnected or reconnected. I think it might have been Minecraft stressing my computer a bit, or it might have just been my Wi-Fi shit itself for a second. Did we back? Yeah, I don't know exactly what that was about, but we chilling. Do you think property taxes should be tiered or varied based on type of property, like 1.5% tax on suburban home versus a entire apartment complex with actually generated revenue for the ownership? Well, so I don't actually think you should like tax commercial property at all, and the apartment stuff, depending on how structured, maybe that should avoid taxation too. But probably I don't know if that'd be like the optimal way to sort of make it progressive, or to at least attempt to make it progressive. There might be better ways, but probably I'm just trying to think what conceivably could be a better way. You guys can definitely hear my space heater, right? Seems like you can with the levels I'm seeing on my OBS. Oh, they do go through Michigan. Yeah, have to be. Oh my god, 34% in some of these counties, and some of these negative 30%. What the fuck? Oh, change in net tax burden. So all the cities are getting fucked, and then there's some little rural areas, some farmers, okay, who are gonna benefit. Let's go. People really hate property taxes because it's highly salient. I agree. And decoupled from income, so we can't ease worries with temp abatements or improvements. I agree. That's why, well, at least part of the reason why politically they're toxic. I don't want to say some of it's also just disinformation. But like, I think people, maybe I'm wrong in this, I feel like way more people today are gonna like just be as mad about, oh my god, you can't actually own your property yet, I'm still renting it from the government, because I saw some dipshit say that on Twitter. And I feel like people just did not used to view it that way, and that's probably more pervasive now because of social media. do you mean? I'm not really trying to make it progressive, but it's trying to avoid political consequences, like some people being priced out of a home they've already paid off. Well, so the benefit of that though is younger people get to move to areas, right? Like it reduces like the lock-in effect there, right? Like it's the benefit of boomers being priced out because they have to pay property tax is that young people get to move in. So even that's like not like that might be a bad thing for the boomers, but that's actually a good thing probably overall for, you know, allowing younger people to move into these places. And it like the fact that it does incentivize people to downsize, like it is probably bad that, you know, more like empty nest boomers own homes than millennials with kids own 3-bedroom homes. Like you probably don't want that happening, and like property tax will actually help with avoiding that. They've already paid off property tax on asset price inflation. Well, so part of it also is that, I mean, well, two things. So, property taxes, one, are boomers ruined culture of America. Changed my mind. So true. Listen, I do. And okay, did I tell you? When I had lunch with my grandparents like last week, they were like, "You need to get a job, because then you can start paying into Social Security, so there's going to be money for us." And they were like mostly joking, not being serious about that. But it's funny though. That's the first reason. What's his name? Oh, so for one, like property taxes do in some sense they are a payment for the services, the city services you consume. Now technically, like I think Margaret Thatcher actually tried to do something that was closer to like, you know, like a taxing you based on like how many people were in your house and like roughly how much of the services you actually consumed, rather than using the property value as like an approximation for how many city services you're kind of consuming. But second of all, houses do just have consumption value, right? Like you consume a house very slowly over time. Like you are consuming a stream of services that your house provides to you. And if you want to tax consumption, that should be taxed. But it is really inconvenient. First of all, it's really inconvenient to tax the consumption value of a house up front, because it would be like an absurd lump sum amount that you have to pay. It just makes more sense to, you know, split it up over time as services are actually consumed, especially because you might like, you know, sell the house later. Like how are we even to assess how much you actually use it? And that's what. And secondly, the actual consumption value of the house will change over time based on what happens with the community, right? Like as the value of the property changes, so does the actual consumption value of the house, because part of the consumption value of the house is the location, is the fact that you're, you know, living in some community that has all these benefits or has all these bad things around it. The value that you get out of consuming a house will change over time, and actually makes more sense to, even if you just want to tax consumption, year by year evaluate the consumption value of the house rather than doing it at like a lump sum. This is your job. I paid you like $50 at this point. I'm pretty much your employee here. That's true, Copit. Okay, this is true. You're actually coercing me, because all employer-employee relationships are coercive. So evil. I'm from a small town, and if my home county didn't have property taxes, the affordable housing and schools would have been a very scarce situation to live. Yeah. It already caused all the affordable housers. It already was because all the affordable housing was trailers based. Actually, chat, remember boomers have insanely good pensions and other retirement accounts. I bet even 3.5% property tax won't wrench some out of those houses. Well, that being said, a point still stands. I think, shit, do I have... I don't know if I have it saved in my notes anywhere. I actually remember replying to someone on Twitter with a study about it, though. That did actually, it had some, ignore the goon stuff on Twitter that I replied. Ignore, you don't have to worry, ignore that. Property taxes. New GPU, what about RAM? You're gonna need 800 for that? I have I have RAM already. I upgraded my computer / built a new computer, depending on property tax is probably the flattest type of tax. I mean, so I don't think that's sufficient to make a tax on net bad or anything. And I think there probably would be ways to structure property tax that would make it progressive, obviously. But I don't know. I don't know if any state has succeeded at that. But yeah, I got a new case, new CPU, new cooler for the new CPU because it's Intel i9. It's gonna blow itself up if I don't get a fancy cooler for it. What else did I get? A new motherboard and new RAM. The RAM I got. I mean, now that I have it and know it's working and everything, incredible deal. I got 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM for $40. Now, small caveat. This was it was a bigger caveat, but now I know it's working. Now it is actually just a small caveat. It's from everyone's favorite and well-known RAM brand, Kim to Go. I'm trying to find the picture I took of it. Everyone knows this brand, Kim to Go. Bro brought North Korean RAM LMAO. They're a Chinese RAM manufacturer, and it actually is. So Kim to Go sounds like a fucking scam, okay? They actually are a legit RAM company in China, and you know, they're not like super unreliable or anything. It is, as far as I can tell, they don't actually sell anything in the US. They simply their RAM will sometimes be in pre-built like computers that are sold in the US. The way this RAM, you know, was got in the US is probably it was in a pre-built computer and someone took it from that. But they're not actually like a shady company in and of themselves. It's just, if you try to buy Kim to Go RAM in the US, because illegal RAM, exactly, you're gonna run into issues because there's no reliable seller of them. And so if you look at, like, I tried like looking at reviews for this stuff, there aren't many, but like any of the bad reviews are not about the RAM itself, it's about the sellers of the RAM. Now it's not very good RAM. It runs at like 4800 megahertz, which is not very fast. But A, it's still faster than the 3200 megahertz I had before, and B, $40 for 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, and you think I give a fuck that it's 4800 megahertz instead of 6000 megahertz? Buddy, I'm taking that deal anyway, any day, bro. Like, massive problem is Democrats are currently winning elections on lowering property tax law. Do we need to sacrifice this base tax in order to save democracy? Maybe, bro. Maybe. My laptop is 5 years old and half the screen is darker than the other side. Based. How much did it blame for the recent anti-Semitism being put on Sauron? All of it. Why property tax is preferable to capital gains in real estate, and taxes on real estate sales? So capital gains tax, obviously, just because I expect the behavioral response from capital gains taxes to be much higher than from property taxes. And actually, one thing this mentions in this abstract here, back in my day, we used to use 1,333 megahertz RAM. Shakes Kane. Base. Dude, also, you know, by the way, that computer issue I was ranting about yesterday, I don't know why the fuck this is. I figured out how to fix it. Basically, I don't know why every fucking driver I could find to fix the internet driver in that computer, it's just like none of it would work at all. I don't know what the fuck it was. I reset the like if I have the RAM run at a lower speed, if I don't enable like the XMP shit whatever, and just have the RAM run at like 2000 megahertz, which is not a good speed, but I don't care at this point. I've tried everything else to fix it. Then the internet driver will install and it can connect to the internet. I don't know why that is, but I'm not fucking touching that thing, okay? Because goddamn did I spend 5 hours trying to fix that shit, and I just had to run the RAM at a lower speed for some whatever. Anyway, low property taxes amplify lock-in effects for elderly homeowners, limiting housing access for young families. Higher property taxes function as embedded leverage, reducing required down payments through a capitalization effect, and enabling a greater homeownership among younger households. Our overlapping generation model shows that raising California's property taxes to Texas levels would increase homeownership by 6 percentage points and young household ownership by 8 percentage points. Conversely, high capital gains taxes would worsen lock-in effects and reduce young home ownership. Asset taxes can effectively reallocate housing to high valuation households when financial constraints exist, providing an independent justification for property taxation policies. How did Pisco steal Hanukkah? Dude, when was that video made? I was not aware of the Pisco Gundam lore until a little bit before the podcast, because I saw Pisco talking to someone else who also went on that podcast, the Gundam and Gilmore podcast, which by the way, I remember I forgot to respond to one of their DMs, I think. Ooh, I don't know if related, but I'm pretty sure my old motherboard has a short in one of the RAM slots, which caused similar sketchy behavior, and I got better when I didn't run it at full speed. Yeah, maybe I don't know what's fucked up about it. You could eliminate a lock-in effect by charging interest on unrealized tax liabilities and expense improvement related purchases. Charging interest on unrealized tax liabilities. I don't even know. I understand all the words individually. So when you say charging interest on unrealized tax liabilities, are you, like, is there going to be some like lump sum payment at some point where you have to actually pay the interest on the unrealized and expense improvement related purchases? I can understand that part. I still think we gotta find some way to build a shit more units. Well, I agree. But again, I actually think the behavioral responsive property taxes, from my understanding, is not that high. So. I'll read the tax foundation stuff on it at some point. Maybe on stream? I don't know. It's the podcast. Best way to build more is to build less, thus increasing prices, increasing the incentive to build more. True. Me when I Mike Fellman post. Dude, there was... Hold on, this is reminding me of this shit. For a reason that hopefully you can connect on your own. I'm not gonna find a Twitter thread. I don't care enough to do it. There was some like just dumbass Marxist Leninist on Twitter. It was like speculative investments should be banned, and then someone asked why, and then said because it's literally rent seeking. And in like the dumbest way possible, he kind of has a point in the sense that investors will invest in things that they expect to have a higher rate of return than other assets, right? Like they're trying to earn above like interest, the safe interest rate, like from T-bills and stuff. It's just that a point of the market mechanism is that by quote unquote rent seeking in that way, they dissipate those very rents. Technically, even buying oranges at the store and selling them to your friends is your friends later is a speculative bet. Well, I guess I don't know if he would say the intent is what matters. I guess technically you're not doing it with the intent of speculatively investing, but that shouldn't matter for what he was talking about it being rent seeking, but still be like rent seeking without the intent. Trash adds fruit. True. Okay, back to this stuff. What counts as non-speculative investing? Fixed income? Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think he would say basically any investing, because he's like a full-on like Marxist-Leninist labor theory of value guy. So I don't even know if you would count fixed income as not speculative. Because I mean, technically, like investing in fixed income, like you're still speculating that at whatever margin you're at with regards to your portfolio of fixed income to equities, it is, it's better for you to buy fixed income rather than more equities, because the return is safer and you want to diversify risk. Like all that is still speculative, but there's very risky fixed income investments, to be fair. Well, but even if it's a safe fixed income asset, like the fact that you're even evaluating whether to buy fixed income or at least typically more risky equity, like that's still to some extent speculative. What was your question? Sorry, I missed it. I'm just unclear exactly what you mean by charging interest on unrealized tax liabilities. I guess I can understand all those words individually. I'm unclear what that actually looks like in practice. Like I don't know. Like when are you paying the interest? Well, you're on the topic of rent seeking. What is the value added by investors buying up commercial property in cities in Seattle and renting it to businesses? So, I mean, so there is evidence, this is not exactly what we're talking about, that like institutional investors are actually like more productive at like building homes. Like can actually, like they are more efficient. They can build more homes with less resources because there are economies of scale. And because they can, benefit from, insurance payments is kind of a benefit they get from economies of scale because they have more negotiating power, that stuff. It feels like it just makes companies raise their prices. The companies raise their prices, which makes people need raises in wages to pay for higher prices, which means higher prices and everything raising means rent in the area will increase, and it's a horrible feedback loop. No, I mean, I don't think so. For the amount that they can raise their prices, first of all, is going to be constrained by the existing housing stock in the market. Even if other firms are not building housing, the fact that there are other, most of the housing stock in any given year is 98% old existing housing stock, and that's always going to, that's always going to exist, and they're going to have to compete with the old existing housing stock. And obviously, part of the reason I was talking about this earlier, why wage price spirals aren't a concern, is that it doesn't, I don't actually think there's evidence for that type of feedback loop happening even on a local level. In fact, on the local level, I think it's worse because the stuff I was citing earlier for that not being a concern, at least more broadly, not just in housing prices, is actually state level data looking at inflation rates and wages by state, and they don't find any evidence of that type of wage price spiral. What about for things like restaurants and other things not directly real estate related? I guess I don't know what you, when you say not directly real, I still like the physical restaurant buildings are real estate related. How to determine which businesses should have which commercial properties without prices, i.e. rent? Well, I think he's just saying, like, so the concern, and okay, I think you could cite, is that if they buy enough commercial property or whatever, they would have substantial enough market power to charge whatever prices they want. No, I just don't think we really observe that. And then even if they do that to some extent, that's partially offset, or maybe fully offset by, that's not even the argument he's making though. So I think the argument he's making is wrong. Yeah. But I think the more valid concern is what I just mentioned, which I think is still wrong. I, for one, think we need super lax immigration to get as many laborers here as possible, and build as many houses as possible. But they also have to live in houses, so you know they could increase the demand for housing more than the supply, and most immigrants probably do that. But they also have a lot of other benefits. So. All right. 22 billion, and it's a pretty wide mix of stuff. Electrical transformers, electricity itself, packaged. I wonder if it's probably some European country, right? Special purpose ships, though. Corn, knit socks, I really don't know. I'm gonna guess. I definitely don't think this is right. I'm trying to think. The ships kind of make me think it's an island nation, but the electricity makes me think it's not an island nation, because it'd be weird for an island nation to export electricity, so it's gotta be. Sawnwood, corn. This is definitely not right. I'm just gonna guess Albania because I want to know if it's like in Europe or. I don't think it would be any country in South America or like Africa. Oh god damn it! It is. Okay, so it's Slovakia or something. 500 kilometers northwest of Albania. Wait, is Slovenia? I'm gonna guess Slovenia and Slovakia messed up. I think Slovenia is the one I'm thinking of. Fuck. Directly below Slovenia? Italy? Isn't Italy directly below? Isn't Slovenia? Malta? It wouldn't be Malta. It would be further away than that. Is it Slovakia? Fucking. No. Isn't it like, it's like Czechia, and then right below Czechia is Austria, and then like below Austria and like to the right or to the east of Italy, it's like is Slovenia. Fucking what's the micronation there? Monaco or whatever. I thought, isn't it? I don't even know if that's on. Would it have 22 billion? In exports? Probably not even, right? So. Malta? No. Yeah, that's too far down. The fucking San... I think this is too far down too, but San Mario? Huh? Vatican City would be... I don't even know if I'd have 22 billion. It'd be like tourism and shit. Is it... what the country with the F1 track? What is that one? It's not Montenegro. Is it Montenegro? Now I'm second guessing myself. It's not Montenegro, right? That's the one by... Wait, is it North Macedonia? This is the one with the F1 track. Serbia? Is it Serbia? No, Serbia is to the... Serbia's to the east more, is it not? Then Slovakia? I'm guessing North Macedonia. I don't think that's right, though. That's not even on there. Macedonia. Croatia? What the f... Hold on. Maybe my geography's crazy here. I gotta pull it up on Google Maps first to not... Oh my god, I thought... Fuck, it is like that. Okay. Clear right now? I'm stupid. But yeah, no, Czechia, Austria, Slovenia... I guess Croatia is technically right below it. I guess Croatia has the long ass coast, so I should have remembered that, because Croatia is a coastal nation. It's not just over here. Guess every country around Croatia. I fucking did, bro. Ugh, I knew that too. Well, I didn't know it obviously, but like I did. I mean, I pinned it in the Balkans. Okay, even at first, I was like, some fucking country in the Balkans. Just say Yugoslavia. Call it a day. True. Can I guess Yugoslavia, please? Fucking trade all. Do you want to know what's funny? Because we've been so distracted, I think I can. I think there's a. Oh no, they must not reset it at 12 a.m. my time. I guess I want to see what we wrote in middle school. Most proposals for changing the minimum wage either entail marginally raising or lowering it. Some want as high as at $15 an hour, while others want as low as $7.25 an hour. When discussing it, very few challenge the very nature of its existence. People who want to raise the minimum wage often portrayed as champions of the poor, while those who wish to lower it are said to be helping the rich. If one ignored the political rhetoric and focused objectively on the effects of minimum wage, they would likely come to realize that it is neither good for businesses nor workers. Ooh. As counterintuitive sounds, the minimum wage that would help the poor the most would be $0. Unfortunately, the way to reduce poverty doesn't lie in minimum wage, and any attempt to use it to fight poverty will have very negative results. I do think the effects of minimum wage and poverty are actually not good. I think it doesn't appear to help very much, and there are also issues. God, I forget which paper found this. I could probably find it. There are also issues because disabled people usually get like exemptions from minimum wage or whatever. But like if for disabled people who can't do most regular work and therefore are not usually paid very highly, are subject to the same minimum wage, a lot of times I think they did increase poverty for disabled people. The whole thing doesn't even reference any research. Oh god, this is written by a 7th grader. Okay, we're looking at someone's old blog post here. Common belief minimum wage is necessary because workers are exploited by greedy businessmen who care only about themselves, who pay to work as little as possible. This core assumption of those who support minimum wage is totally false. I don't think so. You don't actually have to, like, you can believe in some level of monopsony power and not portray it this badly. like plausibly in counties or cities or places where like there's an Amazon warehouse and like that employs like 50% of the people there. You know, maybe Amazon does have some wage setting power in that scenario, and it could actually be maximizing efficiency. It could actually be efficient to have a minimum wage. Now, I don't think that supports like a national minimum wage that much. I'm not sure that happens that often, but it's not impossible or anything. Suppose there are two businessmen, A and B, each a greedy sociopath who cares only with themselves. Yeah, it's market competition. True. A metagrated person, A and B, would simply agree to expect that they would agree to pay the workers once an hour. This might be true in a simplified example. In the real world, there are hundreds of businesses competing for workers. Even if conspiring would be possible with two people, it would surely be impossible with hundreds of people. This is basically true, each of whom generate more profit individually by paying workers the correct amount. Thus, the greater businessman will benefit workers of their power to free market. True. No. One wanted to stimulate the wages of the poor. Forgot to delete one word there. The best way to do it would be to simply give money to people who work and have incomes below a certain point. This is all true though. As people's incomes would grow, their benefits would decrease. This would increase the wages of the poor without distorting the free market. True. I too read Milton Friedman. People get very concerned about Amazon being the dominant player in an area. Understandable, but then why do people look so fondly at a time when a single auto manufacturer or coal mine were the dominant player in the city as well? Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of it's just vibes. I mean, plausibly they had some amount of wage setting power as well, but yeah, it's just vibes. I don't even think that like there's not that many people who literally fucking worked in a coal mine or whatever, and like even like look that favorable upon it. Although people who can't get who were not able to get jobs afterwards because they lack skills might still feel favorably, but a lot of it's just like vibes. Like people just look back on that time of rose-colored glasses and it's all just vibes, like, oh, the 50s were so great for all these workers. Although I'm sure part of it too is that those jobs were more heavily unionized than Amazon warehouses. Under current capital gains rules, you get to invest your share and the government gets the share of the game, and you only hand it over to government at sale. Government share at sale with zero interest. This is bad since it incentivizes deferral, which creates a lock-in incentive. Okay, no, I get okay. So one, I thought you were initially, I was partially confused because I thought you were talking about reducing the lock-in stuff in property taxes, but no, I understand that, yeah, to reduce lock-in effects in capital gains taxes. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Honestly, but I still don't know. So when would you actually? Are you still going to be paying when you sell the asset, and then we're just calculating the interest on the back end, or are we like taxing unrealized interest as it happens? I mean, I still understand either way you're going to mitigate the lock-in effect, but. Then again, Amazon workers can unionize too. That's true, but it's just less common nowadays. I don't even think all of it is due to just like legal stuff with regards to unions becoming less powerful or whatever. But like, as in, I don't think the decline in union membership is solely due to like the government giving less protections to unions. One funny idea is that actually this is about strikes, but obviously unions are the things that make strikes more likely. Hey, I gotta go by sleeping in my chair. Well, I appreciate you stopping by, Gavin. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. See ya. Probably tomorrow. I think I'll stream tomorrow. Maybe not though, because I'm having dinner with someone and then I'm playing Minecraft with my friends. But I don't know. Unions are losing power every day because of automation and AI. Well, yeah, I mean, I somewhat agree with that. Labor's rights. Well, so the idea this supposes is that industries like mining, which have, I'm going to see if I can remember the assumptions, or not the assumptions, the conditions. It's like intertemporal, high substitutability over time. Like people don't mind deferring some consumption now for consumption later or whatever. I think it's that, and there's one other condition. There's another condition. But in those markets, strikes can actually be beneficial to capital holders. And I should have highlights if it would work. Oh. Hold on. Oh, this is stupid. There's gotta be a way they can change this. All my extensions are disabled because I logged into my browser on the computer that I'm going to be using as a Minecraft server, and I just disabled all the extensions in the browser because I don't need them. And if I have the browser open, they just take up extra RAM that are supposed to be dedicated to the Minecraft server. But it also just disables them because I have sync on this. I wonder if there's got to be a way to change that. And it just disabled the extensions locally, but I still want to sync my like browser history and stuff. Suppose that the good being produced has high intertemporal rate of substitution. People are very willing to substitute their consumption across time, and suppose that the industry operates near capacity such that a short-run supply curve is very inelastic. Okay, that was the other one. Quantity won't respond very much to changes in demand, but prices will respond significantly. Under these circumstances, Thompson argues that the industry will actually benefits from strikes. The reason is that the quantity of production is restricted over time, but that the total demand does not change because people are willing to substitute consumption now for consumption later. Vice versa. In short, a strike allows the industry to act as though it is a cartel to restrict quantity to raise prices above marginal cost, increasing its markup. It implies that strikes should be more likely in industries that operate at capacity and have high intertemporal rates of substitutions for their product. Indeed, Thompson cites data on the frequency of strikes from the early to mid-20th century in the U.S. and argues that strikes are most frequent in industries like mining, shipbuilding, shoring, lumber, and textiles. The industries with the lowest prevalence of strikes are those like agriculture and hotel restaurant services. At sale, the government could calculate a tax you have paid earlier. Okay, yeah, then as it interest. Okay, no, I understand that. That makes sense to me. Yes, I agree. It eliminates lock-in effect because what? I understand how it eliminates lock-in effect. Tax liability grows at the same rate as money. The present value of tax is fixed. The timing of a sale doesn't change. Yes, I agree. Well, okay, if strike is beneficial to capital holders, then yeah, it's supported. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is why unions are good, but only in industries where it's good for capital holders. Based, okay. We're gonna read this real quick. Actually, I don't know how quick this is, but we're gonna read this because I have had it to read for a while. And we're talking about this type of stuff right now. Would also be immensely more popular than a property tax. Yeah, but I still think it'd probably be less efficient, and that's what I care about. Well, that's typically what I care about more. I think you can. That's what I care to talk about more. Obviously, politically, maybe I should care about what's politically popular more as well. But with your straight A's at community college, you could transfer to Harvard. Don't even have straight A's at community college. I had straight A's this semester. There are other semesters I didn't. But also, that's not really true. Why would it be less efficient? Because I would imagine the investment decisions are more distorted by capital gains taxes than people's decisions about, you know, where to live and what to build are distorted by property taxes. Because, you know, both supply and demand are probably going to be more elastic in that case. You're going to reduce investment more via capital gains taxes than property taxes. And actually, like, the lock-in effect can be, you know, because we don't charge interest on the unrealized gains, and, you know, like the lock-in effect does, like, mitigate some of the inefficiencies of capital gains tax itself, right? I think I have the book in here, is it this? Or it might be this. Example, the most powerful incentive to hold on to appreciating assets. The lock-in effect arises not because taxes may be deferred, but because they might be avoided altogether. Not that. The lock-in effect provides a powerful incentive to hold assets with large accumulated gains, even if other assets would be more productive. In thinly capitalized markets, lock-in can trap capital in inefficient investments that might be used more productively elsewhere. The argument is clearly most relevant in the case of small privately held businesses, the proprietor of which might keep it going long after it should have been shut down. It is less relevant in the stock market. Even if taxable, individuals are reluctant to sell shares of their companies they expect to perform poorly. Pension funds, which hold about half of all stocks, and foreign investors are unaffected by the capital gains tax. They will quickly sell their shares until the price reflected the prospects of the company. As a result, the lock-in of individual investors should have little or no long-run effects on asset values, although it might affect the speed of adjustment in a market. The lock-in effect can be costly to individuals. They may find it, blah, blah, blah. Oh, here it is. Okay, taxing capital gains might also have a reverse lock-in effect, causing taxpayers to never mind. Hold long-term assets such as trees. Bruh. Oh, it's what it talks about noise trading. It's just about short-term stuff, I think. Some might also question whether individual trading is based on information, knowledge about the future prospects of assets, or noise, ignorant speculation. If individuals are primarily noise traders, market efficiency is not enhanced by trading. In addition, there is some evidence that investors may overreact to short-term information, such as firms' reports of earnings and profits, while discounting long-term prospects of firms. Trading based on short-termism may cause asset prices to systemically deviate from the inherent value of firms. Noise trading can increase the variability of market prices and make it harder for expert traders and arbiters to extract information about the true value of investments. Such trading carries additional social costs because of the transaction costs involved in non-optimal trading. Thus, lock-in may actually be socially desirable. I think it's unbalanced there. It's still going to be bad though, but the consequence is, which I agree with. Okay, I got distracted. Whatever. Well, many good universities in North Carolina also. Yeah, I can go to, well, not any North Carolina. I can go to most North Carolina universities. I'm sure I can get into just fine. It's very easy to hit the sell button in your breakout account. It's much harder to just leave your house. So to tax, yeah, obviously, so to tax your property is a more stable revenue source for Uncle State. Well, not always is it more stable. You would imagine it's more like taxes are, well, tend to be. Technically, they're well. Actually, I don't know if there are. Is it? I guess there's a counterexample to this in the form of externalities. Taxes that are not sin taxes or externality taxes are inefficient insofar as they distort people's behavior, right? So like a tax, if a tax causes you to wildly change your behavior from what you would do without the tax, that's very inefficient. If a tax doesn't change how you behave at all, that probably is a very efficient tax, right? Like the scale at which the tax is efficient or inefficient is determined by how much you actually change your behavior to it. Why can't the government just borrow against future revenue? Well, technically they can, and that's somewhat what I like. There are other factors that go into it, but like obviously that's what like the part of, like when I buy a bond, right? Part of the calculation that goes into that is like, I think the U.S. government is going to be able to collect revenue in the future such that they are not going to have to inflate away the currency to pay out this bond. Anyway. How to spot a monopoly. Competition makes capitalism work. A new method for measuring it may be the holy grail of economic regulation. Competition between companies is seen by most economists as the engine of innovation, economic growth, and prosperity in modern market economies. I meant that in response to the municipal liquidities retort. Municipal liquidities retort? I don't even know. I don't know what retort I gave to the municipal. That was to municipal liquidities retort. But just like easy money, I know you think all taxes are bad, and I think that's a silly way to phrase it. But just like you agree, like property taxes, like of the taxes implemented in the U.S., it's top 3, right? It's top 3. Like the property taxes are stable. So well, I didn't say that. I was reading someone else's chat. But yeah. I mean, it's probably riskier to borrow against future revenue than it is to just collect revenue from property taxes. To balance the competitive market for presidential pardons is looking pretty high. We should be seeing some innovation there pretty soon. That's just true. Well, we already have it. Trump pardoned the we already had the Trump pardon of the girl charged with state crimes or whatever, right? Trump pardon girl state crime. The Tina Peters girl. I don't even think she was. I don't know if she was charged with anything federal. Before you know, we'll be seeing presidential pardons for city citations. Can't wait. Mr. President, I really need this guy. I totally got a speeding ticket just because I was a MAGA supporter, Mr. President. politically prosecuted. Competition is one of the only economic forces to have laws and dedicated regulators set up to promote it, and nearly everyone agrees that some interventions to promote it are worthwhile. But while virtually everyone agrees that competition is a very good thing, it is much harder to agree on what competition actually looks like. Instead, economists, courts, and regulators rely on imperfect proxies for competition, but these are often contradictory. They can lead to perverse outcomes that few people think are desirable. Legal challenges, prohibitions on business practices that would actually increase innovation and growth, and bans on mergers that paradoxically leave markets less competitive. A reliable and usable measure of competition that actually matched up with other measures of whether market is healthy or not is something of a holy grail in economics. Imperfect proxies for competition. Traditional counts of competition use proxy measures like market concentration, which look at how much of the market share the biggest companies have. A country that had only 2 grocery store chains each, of which 50% of the each of which had 50% of the market, would be said to be highly concentrated compared to a country with 1,000 stores, each of which earned 0.1% of shoppers' grocery spending. This may seem intuitive enough, but it can be misleading. For one thing, looking at concentration at the national level can obscure what's going on at the local level. Nationwide, concentration in America's retail sector has been rising since the early 1990s, as chains like Walmart, Kroger, and Target have opened more branches across the country. Concentration, as is usually measured, more than tripled between 1992 and 2012. But retail concentration at local levels increased only by about a third at the same period. The growth of nationwide chains meant new stores opening up in areas that only used to have a handful of smaller local stores, exposing them to new and often intense competition to cut their prices and improve their offerings. Even when concentration does rise, it's not always bad for competition. Bigger companies can benefit from economies of scale that allow them to invest in better technology and produce or purchase goods in bulk, which allows them to drive down prices. These benefits can outweigh any loss to competition from fewer firms being in a market. Fewer companies, same thing as firms. Rising concentration can be a sign of a market that's working well, with more productive companies growing at the expense of lesser ones. Droop. The problem of concentration exists when we zoom out from counties too, and consider international trade. When trade barriers fall, the best companies in a country will grow larger as they expand overseas, and weaker domestic businesses may exit under the pressure of competition from foreign companies, and form their most efficient domestic rivals, which now enjoy greater economies of scale from exporting internationally. In general, concentration is an outcome of market process, not a cause. This isn't just a data collection problem that better measurement could solve. Even if we could measure concentration perfectly, counting every firm, tracking every market share in real time, it still wouldn't tell us what we actually want to know about competition. The measure is not just noisy, it often points in the wrong direction. Why would we continue to use it? Instead of market concentration, more sophisticated analysis of market power have turned to markups. The gap between how much it costs a company to produce goods, produce more of its product, and the price it charges for them. But this approach is nearly as flawed. High markups could simply be a reward for investment in better products or saving technology. A pharmaceutical company might charge high prices relative to manufacturing costs to recoup large R&D investments. Markups seem like a really strange indicator for monopoly. I don't think they... So, I don't think they're necessarily the best indicator, but I think they're better than... it doesn't seem like that strange of a thing to want to look at, right? I'm gonna agree. I'm familiar with Brian Albright's other works, and I've read his stuff. I read some of his stuff on this before, so I know, he just made the argument there. Half of it so far, that markups may not be a good measure of competition, but it makes sense to want to look at. I guess it depends on the average margin of the unit stream. Well, yeah. You should be yeah. But on its own, the mechanism for monopolies harming consumers is charging a higher markup. That's not technically the only way that they can't. I guess they could change like the quality of the good too, and that might not be reflected in markups if the like lowering the quality doesn't like if lowering the quality didn't lower cost for them for some reason, then that might not be reflected in markups, but that would still be abusing monopoly power. Although I think technically, I think monopolies actually raise the quality of goods, right? Because I think what's the name of it? I remember seeing Tyler Cohen talking about it. I think it was on the podcast about like the favorite models or whatever. Not this. Yeah, it is this. Okay, we have Tom, Dick, and Harry. Tom values to good at 9. Don't want to be the dead horse, but evidence shows we have increase in lump sum taxes, i.e. property taxes have negative effects on GDP. I'm gonna shoot myself. Easy money. Just hold on. We agree property tax is top 3 tax in the US, right? That's actually implemented, right? Right? Like, come on. You gotta agree with that. At least of actually implemented taxes in the US. It's gotta be top 3. At least. At least, right? I'm waiting. It's not because it's politically highly okay. In terms of economic efficiency, bro, you know that's what I care about. In terms of economic efficiency, it's top 3. It's top 3. It's top 3. Okay. I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't even rank sales tax above it because I think like the way sales tax is structured in the U.S. Like, I might rank VAT above it, but the way sales tax is structured. There's a lot of tax pyramiding. We actually tax a lot of business-to-business transactions with sales taxes in the U.S. So I don't even think I would rank. I don't even think I would. I might put that above it. I don't know. Top 3 just under the estate tax. The estate tax just doesn't. I mean, it doesn't raise that much revenue. So it's not as like essential as property taxes, so I think. But I don't think there's particularly good evidence on. From what I tried to read into it like one time, I don't think there's particularly good evidence on how much estate tax distorts behaviors, but it's probably not that much, so. Okay, Tom is good at 9, Dick values you good at 5, and Harry values it at 3. The monopolist could sell 1 unit for 9, or they could sell 2 units for 5, or 3 units for 3. Clearly, it's best for the monopolist to sell 2 units for 5 and have revenues of 10. We'll ignore costs just to simplify things. Now let's imagine, forgot about the goat gas taxes. I don't think so. I mean, gas is obviously very inelastic, or demand for it is very inelastic, so it's probably like I think that's good. It's also good because gas is like a negative externality, I guess, and so the taxes, yeah, if like externality taxes, I think are good. I just don't know where the U.S. does externality taxes very efficiently. So imagine there's a change in the characteristics of good, which makes Harry willing to pay 4 for the good. Well, it's great for the monopolist because the monopolist can now sell 3 units of good at 4 each for total revenues of 12. As long as it costs monopolists less than 2 to increase the quality or to change the characteristics of the good, the monopolist can make more money by selling 3 units at 4, increasing the quality of the good, and selling 3 units at 4. Now, notice in this example, a monopolist only cares about Harry. Suppose, in fact, people differ about what they think about quality. Maybe Tom doesn't like this change in the characteristic of good. Tom used to value the good at 9, but suppose because of the change in the so-called quality good, Tom now values it at 6. Monopolist doesn't care. Monopolist can still sell 3 units at 4 each for total revenues of 12. Even though, and here's the key, the social value of the good has actually gone down because Harry only values the change in quality 1 more. At 1 more, Tom values the change in quality of the good at 3 less. So in all our cases, where monopolies will be incentivized to raise the quality of a good, regardless. Nova Nordisk, the company behind Ozempic and Wegovy, saw annual profit growth of 27, then 36, then 31% in 2022, 2023, and 2024 as the world realized that its diabetic drugs was also an effective weight loss tool. Companies that make breakthroughs or other productivity improvements must earn higher markups for some period of time, or else there would be little incentive to bear the cost of becoming more productive. As with concentration, the presence of markups is often a signal the market is working well, not that there's a competition problem. Doing this. More useful measure of competition would be to look at what we're actually trying to get competition to do, working backward from the outcomes we want in order to see what the features of the markets that deliver them. What are the features of the market that deliver them? Competition works because it rewards businesses that find better ways to serve customers and punishes ones that overcharge their customers or offer substandard products. If markets are competitive, then businesses that make desirable products at lower cost will grow larger as customers switch to them, putting pressure on their competitors to improve by cutting prices or making better products. They may face the prospect of having to exit the market altogether. In short, we want to measure whether markets are rewarding excellence or sclerosis. It turns out that such a measure exists. It's called the Ole-Paix decomposition. Yeah, I've read a stuff before. I'm familiar with it. It's a decomposition measure. Measures whether customers are switching to more productive companies. If productive companies are gaining market share, we might judge that the market is competitive and working well. If not, and more productive businesses are not doing better than less productive ones, something is wrong and intervention could be necessary. Okay, measuring dynamism. I always forget how to pronounce the
Dynamism.
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 Alright, got around, have fun, chat. Remember to invest in your retirement accounts. Thanks for stopping by, Hybrid Heathens. I appreciate it. That's true. All of you should get a Roth IRA. How long is this article? Can I read through all this before, like... Might have to read this tomorrow. We'll see. In 1950, Japanese auto manufacturers produced 31,597 vehicles, only as much as the US produced in a single day. But the constraints imposed by post-war Japan led them to choices that would make them much more productive than American manufacturers. After reading a newspaper about America's supermarkets, Toyota executive Tachi Ono imposed a series of pull manufacturing rather than each supplier sending along the same output no matter the demand and the push system preferred by US suppliers. Toyota's plants would only ever have in their inventory what was needed for the next production run with a small buffer. In order to further limit expenses, Toyota engineers bought cheap general-purpose stamping presses, limited the number of models on offer, and standardized the parts that went into them. Workers were generalists and told to oversee much larger production lines than their American counterparts. By 1963, Toyota workers were overseeing 5 machines each, compared with 3 in 1949 and 1 in 1946. Seeing the problems that American firms had faced with labor disputes, auto bosses packed their unions with white-collar workers and offered union leaders management roles and influential workers lifetime jobs. Paste. By the time Toyota and Nissan started entering the U.S. market en masse in the 70s, Japanese manufacturers were slightly more efficient than their American counterparts, producing more reliable cars and employing fewer labor hours per vehicle. But the industry's overall productivity would only see minimal improvements after the arrival of Japanese companies. While their extremely productive plants, both in Japan and the US, had now joined the market and slightly raised the average productivity of automobile manufacturers selling cars to Americans, the Japanese companies were producing so few cars that this barely affected the total compared to the dominant but less efficient American incumbents. Over time, American consumers began to realize how good Japanese vehicles were. As Toyota and Honda expanded production, their more efficient plants began capturing larger market shares. The Japanese manufacturers were using the same production technique as before, but over time, customers switching to them meant more resources shifting towards them. This was competition, a competitive, dynamic market economy working as it should. This is what's captured in Olympics, which breaks productivity down into 2 components: the average efficiency firms weighted by market share, and the simple unweighted average efficiency of all firms regardless of size. The difference between these, the covariance, reveals whether the market is actually rewarding efficiency. If positive, larger firms are more productive than the industry as a whole, and the market is performing well. If it is negative, something is stopping better companies from growing larger than their rivals. Just so I... Bruh. In the auto industry's case, the unweighted average efficiency of the companies in a market barely changed when the Japanese automakers arrived, but as efficient Japanese manufacturers sold more and more cars to Americans, the covariance increased substantially. The advantage of this approach is that instead of relying on judgments about how many firms constitute a competitive market, which might differ in different markets at different times, or about how many companies should make it, it looks at whether the market is actually rewarding more efficient firms and separates technological progress from market allocation. The covariance can increase even as concentration rises. Unlike concentration measures, the Olympics decompositions can judge that competition is strengthening as industries consolidate, if the success of more productive firms is what is driving that consolidation. Studies have found that the relationship between productivity and market share tend to strengthen following pro-competitive reforms, and is higher in countries that are generally viewed as having more competitive markets. In order to see how the Olympics decomposition would affect competition policy if we use it instead of other measures, I'll look at 2 instructive examples: the end of the AT&T monopoly in cell phones, which is a near perfect example of a legalized monopoly ending, and Colombia's economic liberalization of the 1990s, which is a good case of nationwide pro-competition reforms outside of a crisis. Yeah, it should be good to read this today. Okay. America's telephone monopoly. For most of the 20th century, AT&T operated America's dominant phone network and provided both phone services and the devices connected to the network. It served around 75% of the country's local telephone services and almost all long-distance calls. Households did not buy phones, they leased them, and because AT&T generally did not permit third-party devices to be used on its network, its manufacturing subsidiary, Western Electric, supplied 90% of the equipment on AT&T's network. Why did my browser tab just kill itself? That's show. Okay, cool. The standard desk phone was the Western Electric Model 500, a solid black rotary phone. Insofar as there was any competition at all, it was between AT&T telephones and highly imperfect substitutes like sending letters or telegrams, or actually traveling to the person you wanted to speak to, and so on. The 1968 Carter phone decision forced AT&T to allow certain third-party equipment to connect to its network. This had a dramatic effect on competition. The number of manufacturing plants of telecommunication equipment like central office switches and telephones nearly doubled between 1967 and 1972 as new firms rushed in. By 1987, there were 584 plants operated by 481 different firms, up from just 164 plants and 131 firms in 1967. Turnover was high, around 60% of plants operating in 1972, accounting for 40% of output and jobs in the industry, had closed by 1987. Over 2/5 of plants active in 1982 failed to survive to 1987, representing about a quarter of 1982's production. Wait, so, okay, over 2/5 of plants active in 1982 failed to survive to 1987, representing about a quarter. Okay, never mind. I thought he was just repeating himself, but never mind. Okay. The high turnover companies making consumers telephones became even more pronounced after a legal decision forced the breakup of AT&T networks into seven regional networks in 1984. We can use this as a base case of extraordinarily competitive market. All three of our measures were correctly identified as such. Concentration fell as a monopolist was forced to share the market with many competitors. Markups were not tracked, but almost certainly fell as the products were simple and similar, not based on extensive R&D or intellectual property protection. The OLA PICS decomposition finds the same result. The average manufacturing plants efficiencies didn't see much improvement between 1974 and 1987. Individual plants weren't suddenly becoming drastically better at making phones just because of new competition. What shifted was which plants were doing most of the production. At the start of the period of competition, a plant's efficiency had virtually no connection whatsoever to how much it produced. Correlation was 0.01 in 1974. Factories that could make phones quickly and efficiently had essentially no ability to gain market share at the expense of those slower, costlier rivals. Since AT&T's customers had no choice which company to buy the device from, and since AT&T would not lose customers by making them to go to inefficient suppliers, there was no extra business for manufacturers who could outproduce their competitors. By 1980, this had changed. The opening up of the telephone market to choice and competition meant that at last customers could shop around for cheaper, better phones, and more efficient producers could benefit. The correlation between a plant's efficiency and a share of production jumped from 0.01 to 0.28 by 1980. A year later, it reached 0.35. That was meant. I'll disappear. Actually, I can. Do this. This historical example is like a control group. It shows that the most obvious cases of increased competition, the OLA PICS decomposition, finds the right thing, agreeing that in these cases, both concentration and very likely markups. Reforms in Colombia. We can think about competition in this way, not just for individual sectors, but for entire economies. Unlike many other countries that have gone through significant economic reforms, 1990s Colombia was not in the midst of an economic crisis. Instead of a convergence of external pressure from the World Bank or the growing popularity of the Washington Consensus provided the initial impetus for their reforms, and President Cesar Gaveria's areas, something like that. Reformist government then pushed them even further. Trade liberalization was central to the reform program. The country slashed its average tariff on imports from 62% to around 15%, exposing domestic producers to much stronger international competition. Labor markets were also liberalized. The cost of dismissing workers fell by 60% or more, so base, making it easier easier for firms to restructure their workforce. I'm saving this for later. Before this reforms, a factory's success often had little to do with how efficient it was at making products. A plant could be relatively wasteful of materials and labor would still but still do well if it had strong local customer base, since only domestic companies could compete, and it was expensive and risky for new companies to enter the market. In the case of the car industry, Colombia's protectionist policies supported a market dominant by just 3 domestic assemblers of parts made abroad. Foreign assembled vehicles were effectively locked out by tariffs, which averaged around 200%. Cars sold in Colombia typically cost 2 to 3 times their international price, while offering fewer features and lower quality. The reforms cut. Are you gonna watch Jubilee? Probably not today. Tomorrow, if I stream tomorrow. If I don't stream tomorrow, the day after. I think I'll stream tomorrow, probably, but I don't know. The reforms cut tariffs on foreign-made cars from 200% to approximately 38% between 1990 and 1992. In 1991, only 26 car models were available in Colombia, all domestically assembled. By 1992, just 1 year after the reform, 71 different models were on offer, 44 of which were imports. The price of cars collapsed after the reforms. From a high of 25,000 in 1996 terms in 1987 to just over 15,000 10 years later. Well, cars sales doubled almost immediately. Domestic manufacturers also grew their sales. As the car market in general grew, but they lost market share. Market liberalization led to lower prices, expanded consumer choice, and a reallocation of market share, reflecting the new competitive landscape. Over 5 years, existing factories got better at what they did, improving their own efficiency by about 3%. But the biggest gain came from the market's new ability to reward efficiency. More productive factories grew larger than less productive ones, which meant that overall productivity grew nearly 8%. Hence the difference between the weighted and unweighted productivity, the covariance increased. This is part of a broader pattern across Colombian manufacturing. New competition from overseas forced domestic producers to get their act together or lose market share. Manufacturers that faced the greatest import competition simultaneously increased their productivity and lost demand to even more productive overseas rivals. Britain's missing productivity. Well, hold on. Okay. Measuring competition accurately can also allow us to explain more complicated stories, such as Britain's economic stagnation in the decade after the 2008 crisis. Economic recessions often have a cleansing effect. Less productive firms. I know we have the fucking Mr. Melanier. What's the guy's first name? The liquidate labor, liquidate stocks, liquidate purge rottenness out of the system, dude. Bro, even Friedman doesn't agree with this. Less productive firms exit, while more efficient ones survive and potentially expand. Well, it's more limited, I guess, than that. In the immediate crisis years, between 2007 and 2010, the correlation between productivity and market share in Britain remained stable, suggesting that competition was working just as it did before the crisis, with the market share still flowing to more efficient producers. But beneath the surface stability, more troubling patterns were emerging. Unlike the 1990 to 1992 recession, after which productivity within manufacturing firms rebounded strongly, the post-2008 period saw persistent weakness in productivity growth inside companies, and this occurred across sectors as diverse as financial services, mining, electricity, and gas. So what's going on? Subsequent Bank of England research found that in the years following the financial crisis, many companies facing falling demand were nonetheless holding on to their employees. Before the crisis, in more normal times, about 9 in 10 companies with falling output also cut employment. During the recession, that fell to 4 in 5. Since their staff had less to do because demand was down, productivity fell. In a highly competitive market where profit margins are razor thin and labor costs can represent around a fifth of total business expenses, having just 10% more workers than your competitors is a huge burden. Businesses facing stiff competition can't afford to keep excess workers. Competitors would undercut their prices and steal their customers. But many of these struggling companies continued operating. Company death rates were estimated to be as little as half what they would be in a counterfactual world where the economy behaved like it did in previous recessions. Net entry, which is firm entry minus exit, was actually positive by 2010, despite the terrible economic environment. In prior recessions, these firms would have died. Instead, they staggered on, tying up workers and capital that could have flowed to more dynamic new businesses. Well, in the earliest crisis years, we saw a stable correlation between market share and productivity. Over time, the UK's reallocation engine began sputtering, and the link between productivity and business growth measured by the Ole Pake's decomposition began to fall. This twin deterioration, falling productivity within firms, plus impaired reallocation between firms, is one good candidate for explaining the UK's puzzling post-crisis economic performance. Between 2010 and 2019, worker productivity grew by 8% in the United States and 9.6% in France from a low level, but just by 5.8% in Britain. And this is despite the fact that British productivity was already substantially lower than both the French and American level. Really? I didn't know it was substantially lower in France. The Ole Pake's measure detected meaningful changes in market functioning that help explain the UK's productivity performance after 2008. This is what we want from a competitive metric. Competition metrics are the ability to identify when markets are or aren't effectively reallocating resources to more productive firms. None of this tells us what went wrong. Of course, the UK's competition and markets authorities, along with the most other competition authorities, would consider it. Would wonder if something was amiss if it saw a rising concentration in the market or rising markups. It has a full kit of tools for tackling issues in markets that have these problems. But the post-crisis stagnation wasn't caused by traditional competition problems like cartels and monopolies. Instead, it was caused by a breakdown in the mechanisms that normally reward productive firms and pressure on productive ones. If the search were thought of in terms of falling reallocation from unproductive companies to more productive ones, it might look like other culprits. Those might be things like bank forbearance policies under which struggling firms were kept alive for longer, low interest rates which allowed companies to refinance debt rather than going broke, or housing policies preventing workers from moving from struggling parts of the country to relatively prosperous ones. One way or another, if policymakers at the time had used Ole Pake's, they might have had a better idea about what was going on and been able to address it sooner. Better measurement leads to better policy. Wow. These four examples show how useful the logic underlying the Ole Pake's decomposition can be to capture meaningful changes in how markets function. Ole Pake's tells us competition is rising in the obvious cases of concentration and markups get right, as in the telecommunications as in the U.S. telecommunications after the AT&T breakup. But where it excels is in giving us the right answer when markups and concentration fail. For example, in the post-Great Recession Britain, where the process of creative destruction stalled despite no real change in markups or concentration. British policymakers seeing no change in markets or concentration after the 2000. Yo, thanks for the sub, Testicle Johnson. The skin is making
Your
more.
skin is looking more clear. Those facial treatments are working.
It's true. It's true. I said this once on the stream. I don't know how many people actually know. I am on fucking Accutane now, so it makes sense that my skin is more clear. It comes at the side effect of my lips being insanely chapped all the time now. What's funny, I'm excited for that jobs report December 16th. Excited is a strong word to use. I don't typically get that excited about them, but I will look at it when it comes out. What's funny is I can't, like, pregnant women can't have this, and they put a lot of effort into making sure you fucking know that pregnant people cannot have this shit. There are so many warnings, and an unbelievable number of warnings that come this stupid fucking booklet and stuff. No fat chicks allowed. That's true. It's real, because it'll make your babies like real fucked up. I can't get blood because if the blood went to a pregnant woman, not that I don't typically give blood anyway. I don't think I ever have actually. But if it went to a pregnant woman, to make their baby look fucked up. Look, it has a diagram here. Look how fucked up that baby is. Lower IQ. Anyway, that's funny. And what's even funnier though is that I also can't have Tylenol. Well, like I won't die if I have Tylenol, but I'm not supposed to take Tylenol while on this because apparently it can fuck with things. So both of those things are combined are especially funny given the context of or given the whole RFK, Tylenol, autism, pregnant woman situation. But I haven't had to or anything. But like if I can have Advil and stuff, I just can't have Tylenol. Okay. British policymakers seeing no change in markups or concentration after the 2008 recession might judge the competition was not the problem, and they don't need to worry about it. But they would be mistaken because they had wrong data. Increasing concentration and rising markups are often signals of functioning markets where demand is flowing to the most productive firms, such as the case with weight loss medication today. In order to distinguish between those cases and ones where markets are generally dysfunctional, such as the pre-liberalization Colombia, we need a metric that tells us whether the largest firms are in fact the best. The Olapex covariance term itself requires more data in detail than we have from some of these episodes. It needs firm level information on both productivity and market shares over time, and data that are rarely reliable across all sectors. The studies that have implemented this approach well, like the Colombia case above, require exceptional data sets with plant-specific price information, physical output measures, and detailed input tracking from across many years. But if competition and statistics authorities decided that there was merit to the measure, they could start to collect data this data more thoroughly, and we could really begin to understand if they found a key to understanding competition as it really works. True. Okay, real quick, I should. Hold on. Okay, based. Your baby will be fucked up, it will. Well, good thing you're not a baby and you've already autistic, so no harm, no foul. This is true. Hold on. I wonder, I haven't looked this up before. Birth defects. Oh my god, it's even more fucked up than the picture, bro. I would assume. Oh, this baby just looks straight up dead. There's no way the baby's alive. I don't think it's not planning on showing it on Twitch either way, but I don't even think I could show this on Twitch. Hold on, this one looks pretty alright. I would assume like 90% of people who accidentally conceive a baby on this medication get an abortion. And rightly so, god damn. It's only like 3 actual pictures. So. Maybe it's just because I have safe search on? No, it's still at like 3. They're all from like the same paper. Okay, well, regardless. I need to get some sleep. As I said, I probably will stream again tomorrow. But maybe not. But if not, the day after tomorrow, I will be streaming. Love, yeah, fun time. Love streaming. Love you guys watching me stream. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to non-fun awards. Make sure to vote in the non-fun awards. I'll have the form running for 3-ish days. Head over to Destiny on YouTube, I guess. Base. And on Twitch, I'm you're the one that has goes on, so not worth sending it to anyone. But if you head over to YouTube, then you can head over to Destiny. But yeah, see you guys later tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Love you guys. Really cool that I get to stream and do all this fun stuff. Yeah, join the Discord, fill out the non-fun form, non-fun award form, like the stream.